Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's regular scheduled meeting of ANC 34G. My name is Lisa Gore, and I'm Commission Chair. I'm also Commissioner of Single Member District 01, which is Hawthorne and Barnaby Woods. And we'll start out tonight by introducing the commissioners, and I'll start with myself. Again, my name is Lisa Gore. My single member district is 01, which is Hawthorne, Barnaby Woods, and that covers Western Avenue from Oregon up past Pinehurst Circle to Upton, back down, I believe that's Tennyson and Utah, and I can't remember where it cuts over from there. Then Beach Street, so past the Pinehurst tributary, if you're in that area, on down to Oregon again and back up to Western. Thanks for coming tonight. We have a full agenda and looking forward to the discussion. Randy?
Hi, I'm Randy Speck. I'm Commissioner from ANC 34G03. That's basically the area between Nebraska and Utah and Broad Branch. And welcome, everyone.
John?
I'm John Higgins. I'm the Commissioner for Single Member District 02. My district basically extends from Oregon on the east to Utah on the west, from Beach Street on the north to Military on the south.
Thanks, John. Chas?
Sure, I'm Chas Kettle. I represent the single member District 7, which is basically between Reno Road, Nebraska, Nevada, and Kanawha and Military on the north side. Glad to be here. Looking forward to the meeting.
Thank you. Connie?
Hello, my name is Connie Chang. I'm the Commissioner for Single Member District 05, which begins on the east side of Connecticut on Legation. So it encompasses the Chase Bank and the Chevy Chase Community Center and Library up to the Circle, and then Western down Broad Branch Road, and then it hooks in on Legation on that east side down to Jocelyn between Chevy Chase Parkway and Nevada.
Thank you, Connie. Peter?
Hi, I'm Peter Gosselin. I'm the Commissioner for District 6, which is the west side of Connecticut back to 42nd Street, from Western Avenue and the Chevy Chase Circle to Military, and on the east side of Connecticut from Military to Nevada between Military and Legation Street.
And Michael?
I'm 3G04, which is Lafayette Elementary School on the west side and over to Western and bounded by Utah and Nebraska, and right next to Lisa Gore. Connie Chang.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, so that's the commission. And just in terms of rules and procedures for the virtual meeting, I'll just go over a few. Basically, the rules are to promote civil and respectful discourse. We operate in a webinar mode, so everyone is muted, but you will have access to the chat. So if you have comments, you can put those in the chat function. If you have questions, we highly encourage you to put them in the Q&A. Especially tonight, we have over 100 people registered for this meeting. So if everyone dumps their questions in the chat, it's going to be very hard for us to find your question and pull it out. So please get used to that Q&A function. It's real easy to use. If you're not asking a question or participating on the panel, you'll be muted, and no video, you won't have your video shown. If you are wanting to make a comment during a specific time, you can use the raise your hand function, and we can find you and promote you to a panelist so you can ask your question or discuss the topic. We're trying to follow the agenda timeline, so any modifications we'll take prior to adopting the agenda. And please, if you are brought forward to speak on a topic, sometimes we will recommend 2 minutes, 3 minutes, however many allotted minutes for speaking time. Please try to speak to that speaking time, especially when we have so many people. We also want to hear from as many residents as possible. So before residents get a second opportunity to speak, we'll always go to people that haven't been heard so we can get a chance to hear from everyone. And we also understand that sometimes issues may provoke strong emotions, and sometimes these issues or these expectations may go by the wayside. So if anything occurs that is or not appropriate, I will make a comment to the person that's making an inappropriate comment. Unfortunately, we've had to remove people from our meeting before, and we will do so again if people in the community disrespect members of the commission. And I'm talking about vulgarities. We've had some really horrible things. I'm not talking about disagreeing with us. I'm talking about, serious, issues that we need to remove someone from a meeting for. So with that, commissioners, do you have any changes to the agenda? Okay, with that being said, I move that we adopt the agenda as is. Okay. 7-0, and we have a quorum being 4. So we'll go to commissioner announcements, and I'll start off. Just want to kind of give folks a little update in terms of single member district 01. I received a lot of reports from folks in the community in both Barnaby Woods and Hawthorne regarding recent auto break-ins. Most of the reports that I've received indicate that these break-ins are occurring during the day and that they're being targeted by work crews. So either domestic workers or laborers in the area that have a lot of tools or equipment in their cars. So I just want the community to know I am aware of that, and I've been reaching out to MPD 2nd District to get them to schedule a community meeting. I want to talk with them to see the best format, because this is occurring across both areas, but it's very similar in nature, which means to me probably something, maybe coordinated within the community that we need to look out for, particularly going into the holiday season. But in that light too, also please guys, make sure, I know we're having like some issues with the street lights. Some people don't like them being bright. Just make sure if you have any street lights that are not functioning in your area, submit a 311 request to get them operational, especially with these burglary issues going on at night. We need the street lights up and working. Also, there's a 24th annual senior holiday celebration that the mayor's office is doing again. So this is 24th year. It's going to be on December 6th at 10 a.m. It sounds like a really great event, and it's for seniors. It's going to be held at the DC Armory. I'll put the registration link in the chat. Leaf collection in our area, we're in Area A. That's going to begin next week, so December 5th through the 17th. Your leaf should be on the curbside by December 4th. I'll also put in the chat this information, as well as a link to the DC leaf collection site, as well as the collection tracker link, where you can actually track when your area is going to be cleaned up. And just to let the community know that WMATA is undergoing a strategic transformation plan where they are looking at different goals, values, projects, initiatives to support better bus delivery. They are holding a meeting on December 6th for ANC commissioners to share their feedback from their community on their new initiatives. So I will be attending for 3-4G. And if you have any comments on any of the WMATA bus initiatives, delivery services, the meeting is going to not specifically address routes, so do keep that in mind. Please send me an email before the 6th, and my email, I will also put that in the chat, is 3g01@anc.dc.gov. And just to announce, a couple organizations are having things. Northwest Neighbors Village on the 29th, which is Tuesday, tomorrow, from 11 to 12. They're having a virtual speaker series in Artist, Washington, DC. Turmoil and Ever Evolving Landscape with Joey Manlapaz, and that's a free event. And then on Thursday, December the 8th, they are having another virtual speaker series, the Avalon Theater, which I think is really interesting. Then and Now with Sarah, and I don't want to butcher her name. It's also free and open to all people. And then another musical event, Jazz at Wesley, on December 17th. They're doing a jazzy Christmas with Bobby Fettler and friends. And that's going to be at the Wesley campus, National United Methodist Church on Connecticut Avenue. So some really good stuff that's happening in the community. And that's all I have.
Lisa, just one thing, the way you phrased it, the work crews are the targets of thieves, not likely the thieves themselves.
No, they're the targets. Yeah.
And I just say that having just had a renovation done here, it's amazing. I've never had my car broken into. The work crews here had 3 cars, 3 vehicles broken into and tools taken. So it's quite well organized.
Yeah. Thank you. There's a question in the chat from Robin, or in the Q&A. She said she used to report non-functioning streetlights on a regular basis, but if stopped due to the installation of new light heads that are unreasonably and unnecessarily bright. If these new lights cannot be adjusted, I will no longer report lights that are not working. So I will answer that. Wait a minute. Connie, are you in here?
Yes, I was just going to type up where we have the 311 on
sorry.
the website, the link, but you can, if you want to answer it.
Yeah, I was going to actually just answer it on one half of the public safety, and then kick it to you and Peter on the request. And my reason for bringing that up is dark streets are absolutely a public safety issue. And my house is right in the middle of 2 new overly bright street lights. One is the orange crime yellow light, which I really detest. But I also walk the streets a lot at nighttime. And, on my street prior to 311 requests going in, we had 4 to 5 non-functioning lights. This street was dark. So it's a public safety issue, and you have to really take that into consideration when you're having these thefts and auto break-ins. Maybe they're targeting during the day at this particular time, but when the holidays roll around, maybe it turns into something different. And I just want the public to be as safe as possible, and having those street lights operational will help that. And then Connie and Peter can kind of talk to you a little bit about, really quickly, the process that the ANC has gone through with DDOT on getting the street lights adjusted. So if you guys can kind of fill her in on that, to give her a little bit of information of where we are.
Well, let me just say that we had a conversation about this 2 meetings ago. We think it's important that people continue to report problems, lights out, over bright lights, under bright lights, to 311. But for us to get sort of data on these new LED lights, in preparation for the city converting the entire street lighting system over, Laura Fanizzi, who is on the citywide citizens advisory panel for the streetlight conversion process, and I have agreed to take any citizens, any residents' comments and complaints, and try to keep a kind of running tally of where the problems are. But we encourage you, and we will help you if you don't know how, to continue to report these things to 311. I'll put my email and find Laura's and put her email in the chat. And then Connie, I think Connie, who's the webmaster, has put a lot of information about this up on our website.
Okay. Any other commissioners have announcements? Michael?
Yes, I just wanted to report that Will Perkins and I from Janice Lewis George's office have been coordinating with DCPS about what the protocols are and what the notification procedures are with respect to school lockdowns, or if it's not a lockdown, a situation like we had near Lafayette a few weeks ago, when that car was stolen and the police arrived and someone ran off and they didn't know whether he was armed or not. We've been in touch and getting information from Danielle Poe and Sharona Robinson. We've gotten some preliminary answers about what the protocols should be. We've followed up with them because we're not sure that they're actually following these protocols. And as soon as we get a clearer sense from DCPS about what's going on, we'll notice a hearing on it, invite the school principals from the 3 area schools to talk through this, because I got a lot of calls during the 2 recent events where it seems as if there may have been danger near the school systems, school buildings rather. So I'll keep people informed, and we'll try to do this probably in a January meeting, because I think it'll take them that long to get us the answers to our questions.
Okay. Any other announcements from commissioners? Okay. Any community announcements? Ward 3, Ward 4. Amir, I know you said you do not have any.
There's one person with their hand up. There's 2 people. Donna Fabrini and Raisha Quarry.
Okay.
Shall I elevate them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, now it's 1. Oh, unless you got the other one elevated. Raisha?
Hi.
How are
Good
you?
evening. I'm good. How are you all? Sorry.
Good.
I joined on my phone. So hi, I just had a quick announcement. I am with DC Plug, and we are in the last phases of the project. As you guys already know, we're in the electrical phase, and we're at the point where we're going to be taking the power lines that are above and actually putting them underground now. So we're going to be trying to transfer over the electricity. So we will be having some scheduled outages next month. We are not certain on the exact date, but I wanted to let you guys know that we were coming out. We starting as early as December 6th. This is all permit pending. We'll be doing scheduled outages. Everyone will be notified at least 72 hours in advance. We've already started reaching out to all the critical customers in that area. And I just wanted you guys to know. So it will happen no longer than 4 hours from Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Everyone will receive at least 72 hours door-to-door notification, minimum one notification, but I'm sure we'll notify you guys via phone as well. And I just want everyone to know what we have planned, and that we plan on sending out plenty of notifications, and it's just coming up. It's never going to be more than 100 homes at a time. Most of the segments are going to be double-digit numbers, no less than 20 at a time, to be perfectly honest with you. We hope to try to get it all done this month in December, weather permitting. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much.
All right, so I'll drop information in the Q&A if anybody has any questions to email.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
No other hands raised, Lisa?
No more?
Nope.
All right. So we'll move on to our first topic, which is discussion of the Chevy Chase Civic Core site with Gil Stucker.
Gio.
Is
Gil.
he, Gil, is he, if you can raise your hand so we can find you real quick.
I got it.
Okay, great. And I'll turn this over to Commissioner Chang.
Thank you. Hi, Jill. Do you have your video on? Because we're being recorded and you won't appear on the recording unless you can put your video on.
Yeah.
Okay, great,
I'm here.
perfect.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, so
Hi.
so just to let everyone know, we have 121 attendees, minus 7 of us is that many guests who are here. And we've invited back Jill Stucker, who's the Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. He came with DPR and DCPL for a special meeting on October 20th and gave us sort of the timeline of what's going to happen for us to redesign the Chevy Chase Civic Core. And the first step was this public surplus meeting or hearing that's going to be held at the Presbyterian Church on 1 Chevy Chase Circle on December 15th at 6:30. Is that right, Jill? I think it's 6:30 to 7:30. And we made that announcement after Jill informed us on November 15th, and we invited him back because there's been a lot of questions about what does this mean? And also he wanted to share some more information about public engagement. So everyone is here to listen to you, Jill, for you to let us know what does this particular thing mean, repeat the steps involved. There's going to be many, many questions about why do we surplus at all? What do we keep as public? What the motivation is behind having this. This is sort of one step is a normal step in the process, but because we've never gone through it, we don't understand it. So I think it's good to invite questions from the community as well, to address all their questions. So I'm just going to let you start by giving the background to a surplus meeting and why we have one and what do you do after and how do people comment? And I have some more questions after your sort of introduction of that. And I'm sure Commissioner Gosselin has questions and other commissioners do as well. And then we'll try to, I will read out questions from the Q&A to you for you to address if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Good evening, commissioners and folks.
You're a little low. Can you?
I can raise my voice. Is that
Yes,
better?
that's
Okay.
better. Thank you.
Booming voice. I can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for having us back tonight. My name is Jill Stocker. I'm with the Deputy Mayor's Office. Just a bit of background for folks who weren't at the October 20th meeting. I've been with the city for about 15 years and worked on many projects throughout the city, including the redevelopment of the Franklin School, which is now the Museum of Language Arts, the Wharf development, Macmillan development, and many others. I also started my career with the city and by implementing the inclusionary zoning program with the city. At the time I was with the Department of Housing and Community Development, had many roles over my tenure. I'm happy to represent our office regarding this project. So this project is a joint project between the Deputy Mayor's Office, the Department of Parks and Recreation, and the public libraries. So our 3 agencies are working hand in hand with this project and will be throughout the life of the project. The surplus meeting that we have scheduled for December the 15th is an opportunity for the community to provide comments to the surplusing of the properties. I'll discuss what that means. There will be no decisions made on December 15th. That is an opportunity for public comment. And the public comment is specific in the statute, and it's to obtain community input on the potentially public uses of the property to inform the mayor's determination whether the real property is no longer required for public purposes. So in this instance, you'll notice in the announcement, we put in a portion of the property because it's very clear from us and from the community and from the ANC that the community center and library want to be continued community assets. So I saw some questions initially or in the chat about will the community center or library be sold? They will not. The question really comes down to, as the project goes through its life cycle, where on the property will the public library and community center find itself? Will it be in one building? Will it be as part of a larger development with housing? Sort of what will be the building blocks that will create the new civic site? So those answers will come in the months ahead, but we don't have any of those answers now. What we have now is we have a question as to whether or not the community has any comments on public purposes of the property. So for instance, we've had projects in the past where we would have an old firehouse. And the question from the community is, does the community still want to have a firehouse here? Is there another public purpose, for example, that the community wants to have at that site? Does it want to be converted into a school? Is there is it maybe a library that would be converted? Is there some other public purpose that the community feels like should be included on this site? Whether it be, obviously, we're going to include the library and the community center. Is there anything else that is a public purpose that the community would want to see on the site? This process is a step that followed the small area planning process that happened over the summer and preceded that. During that process, there was strong interest in made it into the small area plan, which was approved by council, to have housing on the site. So typically housing is developed through a sale of a portion or private land that is developed by a developer. So that's why the surplusing. So in order for a developer to purchase the property, it would first need to be surplused. And then there's the process, a separate process called disposition.
Mhm.
So the process we're in now is just surplus. Should there any of the project even be available for a private purpose? And then in the months to come, we'll go through a separate process called disposition. And the disposition process is when we'll actually start to look at what the property would look like if it were disposed of. So what our office does is after we have the surplus meeting, we put together the public comments, provide a package, a legislative package to the DC Council, which ultimately has a hearing on the surplus and votes whether or not to surplus the property or not, or a portion of the property or not. In this situation, a portion of the property. Similar situation will occur for the disposition when we get to that phase. We will have a public comment period for the disposition. That will go to council for a vote. So that's where we are with the public surplus process. The ANC has asked us during the October 20th meeting to put together a new survey to the community, which we're working on now. Spent many hours working with the community, with the agencies on this. We want to make sure it's inclusive to both add on to what the ANC did in years past, as well as look at operational needs of the agencies to make sure that we get good community sentiment on what should ultimately form the basis for our RFP if we go, when we go to the route of the RFP for this property. So an RFP process where we put a proposal out for individuals to respond to. There'll be requirements in the RFP that will include the outtake of the survey, along with what the agencies require in their space. And that then we'll get responses to that RFP. And that will be coming in the months ahead. But for tonight's meeting, I wanted to really just, if I could, focus on the community's surplus hearing process. I know Commissioner Gosselin had a few questions in a letter he sent me earlier today. Happy to go through those if that'd be helpful, or the commission, you get to advise me how best to start. If I've missed anything from initially discussing surplus hearing, or any initial questions you may have of me.
So I have one question, and then I think we can go to Commissioner Gosselin's question, and then I will read out the Q&A questions. I think that's probably the best way to go. So yes, Peter, you're muted.
Could I just suggest that perhaps after you asked your question, some of the other commission, I mean, I got the
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
I basically got to write
Right.
a letter, so I mean, you know,
Right.
let the other commissioners had about it, and then we'll
Okay.
come back to
So
that.
let me handle that. So one question I had, Giles, is let's say for housing, the district does not develop housing. That's my understanding, correct? I mean, that the land could be owned by the district, but to develop or create housing, the district doesn't do it. They need a developer, and a developer could be a for-profit developer or a nonprofit developer. Is that correct?
Correct, correct.
Okay.
The housing authority does develop land on their own, but from the executive, from the district government, we do not.
Okay. And so there's plenty of questions. I can't read all of the chat right now because I'm trying to focus on your response. But there's going to be people, I believe, who are going to argue for social housing, which we've spoken about, very briefly. That's a council member, Janice Lewis George's legislation trying to make this happen. Let's say if there are people who go to this surplus hearing who say, we don't, and it also includes other people who may want, let's say, a private cafe. I mean, there's other reasons to surplus portions of that parcel, correct? I mean, people could come up with their own ideas and kind of advocate for that. But let's just focus on housing. There could be people who say, we don't want the district to sell any portion of the land that's owned by the district. And we want to develop social housing, meaning the district owns the land, the district would then, build housing. And that is something that people can advocate for. And then you would collate all of these comments. And then what? I guess that's my second question. Then what happens when you do that? Do you put in what DemPed believes is the best way to implement the Chevy Chase Small Area Plan? How do you go about bringing this to the council? I think that's the step that is confusing to some people.
So when we receive the community comments, we provide a summary of those comments. Usually we'll do is take each person's comments. And by the way, when we collect the comments, they'll be available to make those comments during the surplus hearing itself, as well as we keep the record open for about 2 weeks after
Okay.
the hearing. So people, if they can't make the exact day, they can provide comments thereafter. Also, I'm happy to give you my email address. So anyone on the call on the ANC meeting tonight who wants to send me comments directly, feel free to do so. I'll just give it to you now so I can say it out loud. It's GILLES.STUCKER@dc.gov. I just ask that you put in.
Can you repeat that, please? I'm putting it in.
Sure. Yep, GILLES.STUCKER@dc.gov.
Thank you.
And if you wouldn't mind putting the word surplus into the subject line, help distinguish the comments so I can group them.
Okay. Commissioner Higgins, why don't you ask your question?
Yes, I'm a little bit concerned about the concept of surplus. I don't really understand it. And maybe others don't either. Just give an example. Let's say Department of Public Works had 4 maintenance garages, and they upgraded 3 of them so that they could efficiently take care of the fleet. And they abandoned number 4. So suddenly that garage becomes dysfunctional, unfunctional, useless, basically. And so it's declared surplus. I can understand that. I can't understand declaring something surplus, which is as vibrant as the community center and the library and the parking lot, which supports the patrons who go to those places, and the tot lot and the basketball court. They all seem pretty vibrant to me. They don't seem like they're surplus in the same sense that garage would be surplus. I just wonder what does the surplus concept have to do with developer? It sounds like it's kind of a backward eminent domain of public property rather than private property.
Well, the actual site itself, the question that we're looking at now is how to develop the site. So that each of the buildings on the site are close to, if not at, their useful life. We're looking at how to improve the existing public facilities while also providing housing on the site. So the question becomes, how do we do that and provide what each of those public facilities already offer? So the community has already provided and will provide through the survey more information about, how important the varying facilities, the tennis court, the playground, the internal programs of each of the facilities, how important those elements are, and how we can incorporate that into a new development of the entire site. So it's not, in this case, we're not talking about removing any element of either of the facilities. We're talking about how can we add to it by providing housing also on the site. Does that make sense, Commissioner?
I'm still not quite sure how. Surplusity exists here. You're saying because these are towards the end of their useful lives, they are surplus? If they're at the end of the useful lives, then modernize them and rebuilding. But the function is still the same. The function is not surplus at all.
Correct. The function is not being surplus.
So why do you declare it surplus?
Because if we want to add to the site by also providing housing, one of the ways to do so is to provide housing that would be built on land that we would dispose of. So one way to provide housing is, if it's being sold, is a private developer would build that housing and provide it as part of the new development.
Is it essential that it be surplus in order for a private developer to come in? Are there other methods for developing housing there?
The two ways that we normally develop housing is through either a sale or a long-term ground lease of the district property. So those are the two ways we normally do it. There's also legislation for social housing as well. It's another option that's being part of the current legislation.
Yeah, I'm going to move on to Commissioner Speck.
I think Lisa was before me.
Oh, sorry, Lisa, sorry, you moved. Sorry, Commissioner Gore.
I have so many questions. I definitely want to reserve a lot of my time for the community because our Q&A is already up to 31, and I know they'll cover some of the things that I have questions about. One of the things, Giles, and sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I got a Southern Virginia background, and that's how I pronounce words. So
I had my whole life.
Thank you. One of the things that concerned me initially is that this hearing is going to be on December 15th. And I honestly believe that is a real short time frame. I know by statute, the community or the ANC is entitled to a 30-day notice. I believe it goes into the district register within 15 days or so. We are at the holidays, and this is a complicated topic. We have folks in the community that, have a good understanding of this disposition and surplus process, but then we have some people, including members of the commission, that don't understand it. So I spent several hours today trying to read the actual legislation and or the statute. Let me correct myself. The statute that governs surplus and disposition properties. And it's fairly complicated. Is there any way to give the community an extension and move the hearing? And I looked at, and I can't remember the process. It was the one that you were involved in previously. It was a school, I believe, in Ward 2, where there's like a 5-year time frame between when the first public meeting was held and then it finally got to council. it seems like there has been precedent that the community has been given more time. Can we get an additional extension or more than one meeting? Why do we need to have this on December 15th?
So we want to start the public engagement process on the surplusing of the property and on the future of the site. So we want, this is the first where it opens the record for the surplus for this public engagement. In the past, we've extended the time period for individuals to provide. We've got the record open for a longer period of time. That's something we certainly can do in this case to provide individuals with more time to provide feedback on the public surplus process. I'd also be happy to come back to the ANC through a special meeting or through a separate meeting to discuss questions that folks may have about the surplus. So I think, answering questions is important, and that's why I'm here tonight, and we'll be here for other opportunities. So if there are questions that we can't cover tonight, I'm happy to work with the commission on alternative times that I can be available to answer additional questions. And then further, when the legislation goes to council, council also has a public hearing on the surplus as well.
Right.
So
I get that, but it's important that the community gets its voice in way before we get to council.
Absolutely.
If we get, by the time we get to that council hearing, we all know that's a wrap. And it's this pre-process that we're in now that the community has to, not only the RFP, but this process as well, that we have to make sure those concerns get voiced and they get, an opportunity to speak out on that. So are you saying that we cannot move the 15th day?
Well, on the 15th, there is no necessarily presentation. It really is a question of, I will during that hearing, I will give an overview of, describe the property, and I will open the record for comments. That
No,
is
I
the
understand that.
presentation, and that starts the record being open. So I'd like to open the record as soon as possible. I'm happy to leave the record open so that if individuals want to make comments on the 15th or want to make comments thereafter, we can keep the record open to allow additional time, which is, I think, what you're asking for, more time for individuals to have a comment period.
No, I'm asking for the meeting on the 15th, the day that the record opens, be pushed back. And in addition to that, certainly you can extend the comment period. But I think what I'm trying to raise here is that, we're trying to make sure that the community is as aware and is as engaged as possible. This came as a shocker to me, and I'm chair of the commission. So when I got the notice, I was like, wow, this is moving very fast. And I think members of the community feel the same way. We're in the middle of the holidays. We just had Thanksgiving. We're coming up on Christmas. Some of us are college parents dealing with kids. This is a very busy time of year. And I don't think I'm saying that, to just, say, hey, the community is crying. I'm saying this to you as chair and a member of the community that's going through these issues myself. And people want to be involved and they want to understand this process before they come to the meeting on the 15th. So that's not giving them a lot of time to come to you prepared on the 15th. And they're not going to get that information here in this ANC meeting tonight. And the meeting on the 15th is an hour. And I can tell you that is not enough time for our community. So my request to you is to push that meeting back, give the community a break around the holidays. And in addition to that, yes, open the record if you can for a little bit longer. But my request is that you push the meeting back to the 15th. I mean, from the 15th, back past the holidays. And what is the urgency? So I'm really trying to understand from you, why do we have to have it now? And I'm still not clear on that.
We want to start the process of receiving community feedback on this. I hear your question now that you want to move the meeting. I'll take that back with my folks and be back in touch with the ANC as soon as possible.
Okay. So that, other questions around John's. So with the surplus, I know this is the district's model. Are you basically saying there's no other way to get this affordable housing developed without that land being surplus? And can you just briefly explain, you talked about two prongs, sale versus ground lease.
Mhm.
I'm assuming we're doing ground lease, 99 years?
The 90-day ground lease is our standard as well as for sale. It depends on whether if the housing is for sale housing, condos, townhomes, things of that nature, it has to be a sale because it's a sale product that's being developed. If it's a rental project, it's a ground lease.
Okay.
Just standard how we decided.
And can you just briefly explain what's the implications for a 99-year ground lease in year 100? What happens to the land eventually? Does it
reverts to the
revert
ownership
back
of
to
the
the
city.
district?
It does.
Okay. Okay.
And Lisa, to that end, I plan to be here at the end of that lease, so I'll just report back to you, okay?
Plan on being here too.
All right, so.
Okay. Things like that is important for everyone to know, and you just as many of these details as we can get in advance. And that's why I'm asking for that additional time. I mean, this community
Understood.
really
Thank you.
needs to understand these issues. Okay, thank you. I reserve the rest of my questions for the community.
Okay, Commissioner Speck.
Thanks, Shields, for being here. I know the community has a lot of questions and I don't want to take up too much time, but I know there's a lot of skepticism in the community about whether their comments are going to make any difference and whether the city is still listening to them at all in this process. Are we being unrealistic to think that our comments are actually going to have an impact on what the city does with this property? Or how are they going to be actually taken into account?
Every comment will be taken into account.
Does that mean
That's my role as development manager of this project. It's like every comment, read every comment, understand the comments, collate the comments, understand what the community sentiment is related to the surplusing, and include the comments into the package that goes to council, and have it be part of our analysis of whether or not to surplus the property.
Well, let me just ask one hypothetical, for instance. If in the comments, people are saying, look, open space is really important here. So whatever you do in terms of surplusing, it's got to take into account not only the community center and the library, but some open space for playground, for community gathering, all of those kinds of things. That's really significant. Now, is that going to find its way into the surplusing decision?
It will make its way as part of the eventual plan for the civic site, because if that's important for the community to have open space, that will carry its weight into what the space looks like and how the community enjoys a space when the property is developed. So the surplusing, we don't have the development plan yet, so it's a little bit cart before the horse in a way, because we don't know how that open space can be realized. We need to understand what the options are for developing the property to see how that open space can be realized on the site when it's redeveloped.
But if people come in with comments and say, look, we don't want you to surplus this in a way that's going to deprive us of that open space, that would be a key component, really, I would think,
Yes,
in the surplusing decision then.
it would.
Okay. There have been a couple of mentions of surveys. I understand that there's going to be two different kinds of surveys. This is a survey essentially about the surplusing decision itself, whether to surplus, and if so, how. But there will also be a survey that will be conducted about the uses of the space, the public space, the community center, library, playground, whatever. That I understand is being prepared now by DEMPED, DPR, and the public library. And I know I sent you the survey that was done several years
Yeah.
ago, and you're using that as part of the basis for preparing the survey. Am I correct then that there are really two surveys? And if you could tell us what the timeline is going to be for that second survey.
Sure. There's actually one survey. The survey we're working on is the latter that you talked about, that we're working on with the three
Okay.
agencies together. The surplusing process is an opportunity for the community to provide comments. There's not a survey function of the surplusing process. It's an opportunity to provide comments. In terms of timing of the latter survey, we are actively working on that. We have it in draft right now, and we hope to have it out to the community in the coming weeks. Hopefully in the month of December, we'll have the survey out to the community.
Will the ANC have a chance to look at it before it goes out to the community?
That's my question.
Let's see how we get with the survey. We'd like to get it out, and we'll work with you guys on it. We will.
Well, the other thing too is, I was up to my eyeballs in getting that survey done several years ago, and it requires a great deal of effort, grassroots efforts, going door to door sometimes to get people to complete the survey. And so the ANC can be very valuable in helping you to get a lot of responses. And so we want to be a partner in this process. So please involve us to the extent that's possible.
We'd love to do that. And we've already been talking based on the results of your last survey, we saw that the respondents to the survey didn't necessarily track the census data from the ANC. So we were talking about how to better engage with the community to have the survey responses better track the census data for the ANC, and luckily with the city, we have more resources and individuals to help be out in the community and looking at ways in which we can have a broader spectrum of respondents to the survey itself.
That would be excellent. Thanks. I'll let others ask their questions.
Okay, Commissioner Cadwell.
Thank you. You've partly answered my question a little bit, I think, but in this choice between a sale or a long-term ground rent, issues we wrestled with during the entire SAP process was people's concern about the look and feel of the entire development and the multiple uses that we've just been talking about. And so my question is, and you suggest that the choice between sale or a ground rent, a long-term ground lease is whether the housing is to be rented or for sale, but that's a decision that who makes that decision. And regardless of that, does one mechanism or another give you more detailed oversight over what goes on once the development is constructed? If it's an outright sale, what tools does the city have to achieve all the other goals that have been talked about for 2 years now, in the course of talking about the civic core? Or do we give all those up? It seems to me that a lease anyway, you could put many more conditions into, or performance requirements.
Right. So regardless of whether it be a ground lease or a sale, it still is defined as a disposition. We have if the ground lease is for more than 15 years, it requires council approval as a disposition. And Commissioner Gore, if you in statute, you probably saw that at the beginning of the statute when looking at it. So, and in terms of your question, Commissioner Caldwell, about the oversight, regardless of whether it be a fee simple or a sale or a ground lease, the district has very strict requirements and conditions on development of the site and of the use of the site after construction has completed. So whether it be a sale or a ground lease, we have the ability to enforce our requirements on the property. Everything from the requirement to produce and maintain, affordable housing, for example, to any other conditions that we've placed on the property as part of the transaction.
But in the discussions we've had before, the idea that lots of these details will be proposed in response to the RFP. Yet the question of what gets disposed sort of begs that question. Are you going to dispose of 10% or 60% of the property? And which 60% or 10%? The street side, the back side?
And that'll be part of the next phase, the disposition phase. And then once we have the RFP released, we had responses to the RFP, we will receive the responses. There will be multiple opportunities for the community to see the responses to the RFP and how each of the team's respondents propose massing the site, uses within the site. And that's the opportunity, I think you'll see whether the percentage that you're referring to about how the public facilities are maintained on the site. And if it's 10, 20, 30, 50% of a site that would ultimately be disposed of through a ground lease or a sale.
But is the RFP though, where the city expresses its intention in terms of having the property used for housing for sale or housing for rent?
No, normally we do not require one or the other, but sometimes we'll have a preference for one or the other. But we don't generally have a strict mandate. We have a priority of things we want to see in development, and we proceed from there. But we'll see what the survey results come back with from the community. You know, if there's a very strong sentiment one way or the other, you know, that will be go into the ultimate RFP provisions.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Let me just ask one more question here. There's been a lot of chatter about there's going to be no library, no community center. We're just selling off the land because it's called surplus. Can you just say again, Gilles?
So the community center and the library will remain public assets. There will be a publicly owned library. There will be a publicly owned community center on the site once the property is developed.
And the survey that you're doing, which is this is the survey to the community where you're trying to get more of the community to provide input on the kind of programming they'd like to see, the kind of green space, playgrounds, and so forth. That comes later, right? This survey will happen sometime in December. You'll keep it open.
Correct.
Everyone will be able to say what it is that they really want to see. You'll collect all of that, and then that will be folded into the RFP for whoever's going to bid on this project can come in and say, here's my idea of where these buildings should sit. Here's my idea of how we can accommodate what the community wants. Here's my idea of how the library gets what it wants and what the DPR gets what they want in order to serve their mission, correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
How they're complying with, how they're achieving the goals of the small area plan, all those elements that we have that are overlay this site.
So we will, okay, so we'll say this again, December 15th, the reason you want to open the record is you want to start the process so that if the land remains completely public, meaning there's no private use, right? But in the SAP, we say we would like to have mixed income, deeply affordable housing units on that civic core site, okay? If it's completely district owned, then that just means there's a different option then. We're gonna have to figure out how to develop the land to make sure that we can provide housing. Is this correct?
Correct.
Okay. If a portion, and we're not talking about what portion, but if a portion is sold, meaning is allowed to be sold or rented as a ground lease or sold, that provides other options, correct? And that is what you're trying to start with so that you can formulate this request for proposal on how to develop that whole site. This is why we're going through this step by step, correct?
Yes.
So if you hear 1,000 people going to the Presbyterian Church on December 15th, or through emails to you, or through whatever ways of getting to you, and people say, we are worried about private development, we want to keep that whole site public, you will continue to develop the library, develop the community center, and figure out how to put housing on there that's publicly owned, basically, correct?
That would be an option, correct.
Okay, that's what I want to say. Okay, so Commissioner Goslin, you go. Oh, wait, yeah, I think Peter had his hand up first, Lisa, and then you came in. Is that okay? I'm going to go to Peter.
Okay, let me see. I think I could best use my time by trying to build on the questions of my fellow commissioners. And let me start with what Connie and Randy said. Jill, as a legal matter, do you have to modify the surplus proposal you write and pass along, advance to the council on the basis of what you hear at the public hearing? So for example, just hypothetically, every single person, and there could be many of them, come in and say, we want to keep the whole thing public. Are you under any legal obligation to keep the whole thing public?
Counselor, I don't know. No, I'm not.
Well, so that would be a good thing to know.
Legal matter, I'm not here as an attorney. I'm here as a public servant and as an individual working on behalf of the executive. So
you are a lawyer, right?
The legal question I have, I'll answer. Let me look at the statute and I'll read the statute to you.
Okay, then while you're looking that up, let me just try to follow on from Chair Gore's question. Why December 15th? And let me ask it sort of in the reverse, which is, once that hearing occurs, it is discretionary. Is it not discretionary on your part when you close the record? And once that record is closed, is it not the case that you can move the proposal, whatever your proposal is for surplusing, to the council right away? That is the speed bump you need to go over to take the next step. Is that correct?
The surplusing and disposition processes can occur separately. So we can start the surplus process, then with the community hearing, and then go directly to council if we choose to. Historically, we've put them to council together or within a certain proximity. But yes, the statute provides that if we want to have the public surplus hearing, we can go to council thereafter once the record.
And what about the prior question, which is there any once the hearing starts, is there any obligation on the city's part to keep it open a predetermined amount of time? Or could you close it December 29th as your 30-day notice to the ANC said? And does that then satisfy the law in terms of releasing MPED to move a proposal forward to the council for surplusing?
We can keep the record open for as long as we like.
The question is, can you shut it when you want to?
We can shut it. Let me look at the statute. I don't want to speak out of turn.
Jill,
Yeah, sorry, I'm here. I'm just reading it as we go. I think the practical element, Commissioner Goslin, is that we keep the record open to provide as much time as you need, as the community needs to fully respond to the surplus hearing. So if we've had many instances where the community has requested additional time to provide public comment, and we do that. Can we close it earlier and can do only 2 weeks and go forward? Yes. Do we do that? No. This is not a project where we're going to, we want to have a short period and then move, and this is a community engagement process that we're starting now and that we intend to continue for.
Let me just say, I hope you hear Chair Gore. I mean, this community, whatever we end up doing, and I'm favorable to many of the things that I think the city is favorable to, but we need to bring the community with us, and we ain't got them with us now. And December 15th is one crummy time to have a hearing. Let me just, one other issue, and I'll leave it in peace. This issue of how you expect the conversation to go at the surplusing hearing. You know to a certainty, you can tell by looking at the Q&A in the chat, you're going to hear from a lot of people that there are a lot of public purposes that we're going to want on this site. And then, so I don't see how the conversation can occur, how you can conduct your side of the conversation without saying to us, like, what portion, or even a simpler question, like, how much? I mean, that question, because you're going to hear probably from hundreds of people that we've got all sorts of public purposes that it serves now and that we hope it and expect it to serve in the future. So there's this question of sort of what's then left, and is it enough to do the kind of deals you're talking about? How can you have this? How can you have your side of the conversation without telling us what you think the minimum percentage or the piece of the property that has to be surplus to make a deal work for a developer or for whomever, right?
Right. Well, right now the site is, as it stands today, is fully utilized, with across the entire site. And the question that we'll be raising in it, and it's an opportunity for public comment, not an opportunity for a public necessarily a conversation, because we don't have the answers. We're asking the community to provide information to us about what they see, they want to see on the site. So
well, they're going to want to see all the stuff plus more. I mean,
that may be the case. We may get people who want many things on the site, and that's what we look forward to. We look forward to every individual's input on what they want to see on the site as a public purpose.
Okay, just one more thing, and I'll leave you in peace at this point. The way you and I talked about this notice that you sent us, and the way you talked about the surplusing thing, the surplusing part of this process that you're proposing is kind of a blank, and you want to put all the stuff about the specifics of a development in the disposition. But I don't understand why. I don't think it's part of the law that says we can't have at least the broad strokes of the deal. Let me give you in the surplusing agreement. For example, you said to me personally, you said here at this meeting, you're going to keep as city property, the community center and library portions of this development.
Yes.
Is that going to be in the surplus agreement?
Yes, because the surplusing will not include those elements. But the surplus is only up to the element that is not retaining as a district asset. Correct. So the description will have the entire site. It will reserve the site for the public facilities, and will identify the portion of the property that will be for the surplusing. So yes, it will.
Well, how are you going to do that if what people are only supposed to testify? No, let me not go down that path. I mean, that goes back to my previous question.
And that's why, Commissioner, why we generally have the surplusing and disposition together, so we can clearly identify at the later time what portion of the property we intend to have council vote on what will be surplused. I see your point exactly. It's very clear to me what your concern is, and that's why when we go through the surplus, and we first want to find out, is there a community sentiment to surplus any of the property? Is it even worth going to do an RFP? Is there is the community sentiment so strong that there's no possible way for any surplusing of any of the property at all? And then we move next to the stage of, if we do surplus a portion of it, where, how much? And that's the part of the disposition process that will occur in the months to come.
Okay, but on the surplus end of it, to try to put some meat to the bones of this thing that otherwise seems like a blank check to either DemPed or the development team that ultimately does this. What if everybody at the public hearing said, we want to do this as social housing? Does a requirement to try to do it as social housing get included in the surplus proposal you move forward to council?
So we include in the surplusing resolution, which goes to council, which would provide a summary of the public comments received through the public hearing, We would provide a detailed explanation as to why the real property is no longer required for public purposes and why the determination that the real property is no longer required for public purposes is in the best interest of the district. And whether the real property could have any use by the district, including a description of the district's current needs for real property, a description of potential public uses considered by the mayor, square footage of green space on the real property, and a narrative explaining why the real property is unsuited for each public use considered. So that is laid out in the statute. That's what we.
As part of the surplus.
Part of the surplus, correct.
One other question, Chair, and just this, has the council ever rejected a DEMPED surplus or disposition proposal?
Yes.
Which one?
Carmel School. One of my projects. I worked on it for 5 years.
Yeah, that's a classic case. Okay. I'll receive.
Okay, Commissioner Gore.
Yeah, just to really quickly, I wasn't going to say anything, but I just really want to go back to the last comments that Commissioner Speck made on the survey. Again, I'm surprised. Did not know that you guys had advanced this much on the community survey that's involved in our community, and we haven't even seen it. So I just want to reiterate, letting the ANC be involved in that process. We're supposed to be an implementer according to the SAP. And if we can't get involved on the front end of a survey, we have a long way to go in terms of engagement. So I just want to reiterate that we would like to be involved in this process.
Commissioner Zeldin.
So I'm sorry that I remain confused. It's a perpetual state of being for me. But there is no need, if I understand correctly, there is no need for disposition of this property at all in order to develop it, right? It doesn't have to be sold or leased in whole or in part for it to be developed. It can be developed without that.
Word developed means new public facility for a new library, new community center solely. Is that what you mean, Commissioner?
Well, renovating the library and community center and building, if the community so desires, housing or something else in addition to the existing library and community center on that same property.
If housing wants to be developed on the site and it's, I guess, but for the legislation that's pending now, if it's not social housing, if it's housing that we've generally developed over the years, in order to develop that housing, whoever is developing it, if it's not funded by the city, it has, and developed by the city, it has to be funded by a private party that develops the property.
But I guess my question is, it can be funded by the city, so it doesn't need to be funded by a private developer. So if it was determined by whomever is the determiner in this process that we need to renovate the library and we need to renovate the community center and we want to add workforce or other housing into that property, but we do not want to sell or lease that property to a private entity, but we want the city to be the developer of that property. That's possible?
The executive is not in the role of developing and constructing and managing housing. The housing authority does that in large part, yeah. But the deputy mayor's office, we generally, our developments are, we RFP the properties for development to provide affordable housing and many policy goals that are part of each of the developments. So the deputy mayor's office does not generally provide housing, build, construct housing, and manage housing.
Right, but if we decided, or if it was our sentiment that we do not want, or for reasons of trust prefer that a not-for-profit or that the city, the housing authority or otherwise develop this property, that's doable. So we don't need to go through a sale or lease conversation. If you were to allow the community to give you input first, the community could say, it is our preference that the property be developed, redeveloped, renovated, and that workforce or other housing be included within it, that we would like the city to partner with a not-for-profit. We've heard from some of them during the conversations that Connie organized around the small area plan process, or we want the city to through the housing department to do it. Why can't we have that process first, give you our input, and then if that's the consensus of us, then you don't need to go through opening a record for the possibility of sale or development or lease, because there is no need for that. There won't be a need for that because we don't want it.
That, Commissioner, that's what we're doing right now. That's the reason why the record is being opened, as to whether or not there's the sale or the surplusing should occur or not. So those are the kind of comments that we want to receive from the community. Every person's sentiment on whether there should be a surplus or not.
Sorry, I understood you to be saying that you were opening the record as part of the leasing sale process, that there was a determination made that it was going to be leased or sold, and that now we're going to get comments on what portions of it would be leased or sold whole or in part. But this is not the case. We are
Correct. Well,
at a point where we can say to you through a survey, we don't want lease or sale. We want, this is what we want. And nothing, and there'll be no train that has left the station around sale or lease before we get to you our input.
The surplusing process occurs first, which is what we're doing now. This is before there's any determination of sale, what kind of sale, whether it be ground lease or fee simple. The surplusing process is whether or not any portion of the property should be surplused. Meaning, should there be any other use besides a public use? And that's the comment, those are the comments we want to receive now. Then building upon that, the next steps, if they get there, is what if we make the determination that there should be a surplus, then we can move forward to a RFP to see what kind of responses we receive after incorporating the survey results that we would receive from the community. Those respondents would make presentations to the community. They would, at that point, you would have an idea of how they're proposing to surplus portions of the property or to purchase portions of the property, develop the property. And that goes into the next phase, which is the disposition. So there's two phases. I can see if I've been involved with it in so many years, can see the distinction. But when I've been in the communities and other projects, it is a little bit of challenging because with the community, particularly in this case, both the public assets are so important to the community and the green space is important to the community that it's hard to talk about just surplus without talking about what the future of the site will look like.
Yeah, and I guess the confusion that I have, I'm not being steeped in it as you, is that when you said that we are starting the surplus process, that implied to me that a decision was made that there will be a lease or sale, and it was just a question of what percentage of the property would be leased or sold. But what you're telling the community, that's right, you're telling the community that understanding of mine would be incorrect, and that rather this is the preliminary stage whereby we can say we don't want lease or sale of anything. This is what we want. Please don't go to dispositioning or whatever the next step
Correct.
is in the
Correct.
process.
You're correct. Disposition. Correct.
Okay, and besides this December 15th meeting, which is pretty close in hand, and it's problematic in some sense, not only because of what Lisa said about the holidays and such, but remember, our commission turns over in January, and we have 4 new commissioners. And starting a process without having them involved is a little bit problematic for me. But as long as this process is open-ended and that it won't be closed by you until essentially we say we're ready for it to be closed, or that some amount of time that passes is beyond which is unreasonable to keep it open, that's how it will proceed.
We'll work with the ANC on the closing date of the survey.
Okay, and then
Survey,
okay, go on.
Oh, sorry,
then-
of the
whole record.
the record, excuse me. Thank
Right.
you, Commissioner.
And then in terms of the survey, are you drafting it? Or are you drafting it in conjunction with us? And then what will be the distribution mechanism?
Right, we're working right now with the agencies. So what we've done right now is work with the agencies on their current programs, how they currently use the site. We've looked at the ANC survey from a few years ago and had some good questions in there that we're looking to incorporate as well, to get better feedback from the community. And the method of DPR and DCPL both have put surveys out in the past, and we're looking at the exact survey software to use to distribute the survey. We're also working on how to get the agencies in the community to make sure we have a broad opportunity for those 2 individuals to respond to the survey. If they don't, attend ANC meetings, or if they're otherwise busy, so we can catch them at points in time where we can get a better sense of the community sentiment as it relates to the overall community, not just those who see it online. So
Okay.
we're working to make sure we get a broad, full feedback from the community from the survey.
Okay, but in terms of the final document that proceeds to distribution, will the ANC get an opportunity to see it first before it's distributed for comment? Because relying on our survey from several years back isn't necessarily indicative of what the community presently thinks.
Correct. And also the survey from the years past wasn't as expansive as the survey we're doing now. This is now the entire site. Previously, it was a portion of the site. So yes, so we can make it available and work with the ANC on the survey responses and
Well,
questions.
no, I'm not talking
Survey
about
questions.
the instrument itself, that we get a chance to have a look at it in a public forum, and then say, yeah, this looks great, or can you add one more question, or delete this one question because it's confusing, and then say, we're consensed, let's distribute.
We can work with the ANC on the survey itself. I mean, we want to get the survey out as well. So I guess we'll work with, as we get closer to the agencies having the survey questions together, we'll reach out to ANC to find out what's the best way to proceed. To have
Okay.
the survey finalized.
Yeah, because I think there's a distinction between the community and the agencies. And
Yes.
we need to make sure that it's the community's voice that we're adding into this, in addition to the agency's voice, because the agencies don't necessarily represent the voice of the community.
Correct. We know we don't.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Let's move to the community, Connie.
Okay, so there are many questions, but some of them have been answered and some have not. So I looked at it really quickly. I don't think you really addressed the survey, which is the programming for the two, for the public library and the community center, on how it will be disseminated. So how will you help all of us have access to the survey. So will there be flyers? Are we sending it out to every household? Do you have an idea of that? And this is Andrew Rosen's question. And I'm not doing this in order. I'm just kind of going through and trying to see what has been answered and what hasn't.
Working on varying ways where we can make sure everyone's aware of the survey, not only through the formal ways through the ANC, but also we work with Office of Planning to get their small area plans distribution list that was put together from months ago. Also having it available in the community so that people walking by can see the survey is open. I'm looking at potentially having, a QR code people can scan with their phone and they can upload it. Things that make it easy access for folks so they can get access to the survey and fill it out.
And just to clarify, the one difference between this survey that the 3 agencies are putting together versus the one that we did, the ANC did, was the ANC one was just the community center. So this one includes the library too, and includes more than that because of the Chevy Chase small area plan. So, we will work with you on sharing, you will share that survey with us so that we have a chance to see the questions and make sure there's nothing really missing that we know of before you send it out. And then obviously you're going to have open-ended questions, right? So meaning there's questions for the survey, and if a question does not address what a resident is concerned about, they have a chance to write in their comments, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Connie,
Right.
let me
Yes.
just make a quick statement, and I just have to raise this. We get a lot of agencies that, and one of the things you said, Gil, is, giving it to the ANC for its normal or the normal distribution. Please do not rely on the ANC to cover this community. Okay, please don't, because a lot of agencies will send us, whether it's DDOT, and say, hey, ANC, you distribute. Our distribution mechanisms are minimal.
Right.
So we are relying on you guys, and thanks for doing the heavy lifting, but it has to be something then forwarding the survey to the ANC and say, you guys distribute. It has to be, mass methods of getting this survey out to the community.
Yeah, we recognize that the ANC is the formal notice, but it's not the way to notice the community. And luckily with the government and our resources, we can, leverage those to make sure we get broad distribution.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There were a lot of questions about surplusing and just what it means. I do think that the community, it's kind of like the small area plan, the word plan. I think a lot of these terms are very confusing to those of us who are not this is like a term of art in a way. So the terminology is throwing people off, I think. And so there's a lot of questions about that. I believe you've addressed those questions. So I'm not going to read those questions again, but if someone has, if after sitting through, this 45, 50 minutes, if you have a question you want to formulate, please put it in now, because I'm toward the bottom of this, of all of these questions.
Also, if I could, Commissioner, one of the things that we'll be doing as well is, as part of the survey, we'll be doing a frequently asked questions section of the survey. So many of the questions that we're getting tonight, I'm taking notes of the questions and I'll be writing them down and imparting answers so that individuals who have a question about what is surplus, what's the process, what's the next steps, we'll try to outline those as much as possible so that there are questions and answers that are readily available for the community as they look into this future process, is also including any stage. Now with the surplus hearing through, and we'll keep updating that with new questions that come in and answers. So I'm trying to organize them in a way where it's easy for the community to look at them and get answers.
Okay, so now there's several new questions all about this survey, right? The survey of what we want to see at that site. And so people are concerned that questions are going to be kind of, leading questions. You're asking a question because you're trying to get a certain response. There's not a lot of trust here. So I think that the methodology and so forth, it should be shared before it actually goes out. And Jerry Mallitz was the former commissioner in my seat, and he was very instrumental in that last survey, trying to put that one out. But I think there are a lot of statisticians here and so forth. If there's a way to give the community comfort in knowing how these questions are constructed and who's looked at them to make sure that the answers are going to be, meaning the questions are objective enough to be able to get the kind of answers that are not skewed in any way. That would be helpful. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And let me just say that, while we go on, when this ends and we go on to the next one, if you want to answer some of these things, typing the answer in, if you have the time, Jules, I would really like that. I will also send you these questions after we post them online right away, once the video is put out. So everyone, all the chat, all the Q&A, it's all up there on the meeting information page for every single meeting. So this is going to be open, to you. But if you have a chance to answer some of them, that would be really nice since people are still sitting here. Okay, so here's another question. All right. Is surplus the only way a nonprofit developer could buy the property? Could a surplus RFP invite only nonprofit developers to bid and exclude for-profit developers? So this is getting into that question about how we can best make use of that land to develop housing.
Right. That's a legal question. I don't know if you can exclude certain potential respondents from an RFP, but I can find out. Never had that question posed before.
Okay. Here's another question that someone else, it's along the same lines. If a nonprofit developer built affordable housing on the site, would it require surplusing?
Yes.
If not surplus, how could affordable housing be built on the site? So this is the question about, I said earlier.
Well, whether it be a for-profit or nonprofit developer, that entity needs to provide financing for the development. Occasionally, the financing comes in it's debt and equity, traditional debt and equity, and then sometimes to provide deep levels of affordable housing, there are public, both federal and state funding sources to provide deeper levels of affordable housing. So all those sources of funding go into providing the resources to construct the housing with the affordable housing and overall development plan. And in this case, as folks may know, who are on the call or on the meeting, the council has allotted funding, capital funding for both the library and the community center for their reconstruction. So that's
that money, that budget is already there. It's been sitting there. So we have that.
Correct.
What we don't have money for is the housing portion of it yet. Correct. Okay. So I keep, what I'm hearing is we could keep it as district property, but this legislation needs to go through. There needs to be some money to keep it, if it's public, for it to be developed with public funding completely and held as district property. Or if a part of it is not public, it can be developed by a for-profit developer or a nonprofit. And then the former question about, like, can you actually make the RFP only for nonprofits? You're going to find out the answer to that question. So that's part of your FAQ.
Yes.
I think people want to understand that going forward, how the land can be used. Okay.
So if you heard chewing in the background, my dog found a bone in the corner and it's been
It's very smart dog.
Yeah, sorry.
I blocked my dog out, so she wouldn't do that. Okay, so here's another question. If the developer didn't have to buy the site, wouldn't it be easier to finance the construction? I don't know the answer to that. Do you? Yeah, this is toward there. It's like 8. Yeah.
You really can't finance it if you don't. Yeah,
They have to buy, they have to own it to finance it with the banks, correct? Or have a ground lease of some kind. The financial part of it is
to a ground lease or a
difficult.
sale, correct?
Yeah.
The bank would want to have recourse if the loan was, if the debt was not paid.
Okay, so I think I'm going to end here because if you, Jill, if you can stay on and try to answer some of these, some of them seem to be easy answers we've already addressed, and some of them are more directed, I think, and it'll just require a more direct response from you.
Right.
That would be really good. I yield to you, Chair Gore.
If I could, Commissioner,
Yes.
you could send the questions to me. What I can do is I can lump them into sections. I'm guessing some of the questions are going to be portions of
Right.
things, and I can
I
just
know.
lump them all into big sections and organize them so that I can capture. I mean, some folks may have a slightly more specific question. Other folks may have a slightly more general or different question, but related.
Okay.
If I could just have time to see the questions, collate them, and then respond back that way. That'd be
Okay.
great.
That's perfect. And when you do respond, I will put it up on the meeting information page so that that document is there. And so everyone will have it. It's all transparent. And thank you so much for your time. We didn't really get to, I mean, Commissioner Goslin, I think you asked some of your questions already. Do you want to have the last
Just,
word?
I
Are
want to
you
say two
okay?
things. Jill, I'd be interested in the answers to the questions I wrote you in the letter, and I'll post the letter at the same time. The other thing is I look forward, and I think the commission looks forward to hearing back from you about taking Chair Gore's request to move the beginning of the opening the record to after the holidays. I really hope you listen to her on that one.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to yield to Lisa. Okay.
All right, thank you so much, Jill.
You-
You get it eventually.
I'm gonna have to write it out phonetically. I really do appreciate it. I wish we had more time to get, the community discussion in here, but I do appreciate your offer to go through each of their questions and kind of categorize them and give us back the answers. And to the community, we will post all that, like Connie said, on our website. Peter, definitely your letter to him should also be posted on our site as well under the meeting information page for this topic. And we will continue to work on this. So thank you. And
Thank you. Have a good evening.
there will be more. Okay.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
All righty. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shields.
You're welcome.
Thank
Definitely.
you, Jill. Thank you so much.
One of the things maybe as a commission we need to discuss is, and I know this has been a long topic, but we're kind of running down to the wire. I would like to, maybe do a resolution on some of the things that we heard here tonight, some of our expectations for the organizations. I was thinking at first maybe a letter from the chair, but that doesn't get great weight, whereas our resolutions do. What do you guys think about that? It just seems like and I know we've got a lot of resolutions regarding this, but to me, our voice continues to not be heard. And, that is the only thing we have in our arsenal.
Well, I'm all for it, but the problem is that our next meeting is December 12th, and if what we really need to have happen is this thing pushed off to after the holidays in January, and so they're gonna have 3 days to give us great weight. It doesn't sound like we're gonna, but they ought to hear that we think that we need a real public.
It needs to be, I think it really needs to, something needs to be in writing from the ANC on that.
Happy to help on it. Randy, were you going to say something?
I just want to emphasize that, we have been, let's get back to the basics here. The commission has been on the record for years that we think this ought to be developed as a single campus with the community center and the library and public space. We think that it ought to also have affordable housing in a very large, as large a quantity as possible, and it ought to be deeply affordable. Those are the basic premises here. And we need to find a way that's going to get us to that goal. That's what we're shooting for. And there were a lot of the comments tonight, I think, that were legitimately concerned about whether we were going to be able to achieve those goals with the process that's in place. But let's not lose sight of our goal here. And we really want to emphasize, I think, the need for this affordable housing in our neighborhood. And if we're backing off of that, I will be concerned. It's going to be a new commission after January 1st. It's going to be dealing with this. I hope to still be involved in some way, but for me, the priority is, can we get a new community center, library, and affordable housing on this site? And how can we do that in the best possible way, considering that we're going to have to, this is going to be a monster to finance to get it done. And either the city's going to have to pay for it, or the money's going to have to come from some other source. But we've got to get it done.
And let me not mix words. I am not obviously backing off of affordable housing, but I am strongly going to encourage the government to do the right thing and to have, strong engagement with the community. And it's just not happening. I mean, my goodness, we've learned here tonight of so many issues that we're just not being informed of. I mean, we have no involvement in the survey. They're and I mean, this guy is, had to really kind of think about his response to us regarding those issues. And that bothers me a lot. It bothers me just as much as not potentially getting affordable housing in the community. I absolutely want affordable housing and deeply affordable housing, but it is important that, we continue to press this government to engage this body in that process, and that as a body, we continue to engage our community in that process. And I want to keep doing that till it's all said and done. We have a long way to go, and we have to get the government to recognize that they need to engage with us in this. We can't continue to be bystanders in this process, especially at this early stage.
We have not been bystanders. In no sense have we been bystanders. We have been aggressively putting our position out there for a long time, years.
But if you look at, as I wrote you today, Randy, if you look at the sidebar that talks about next steps for the civic core, we aren't there. We are not listed as implementers in that chapter. It's the only chapter in the small area plan where we are not listed. I too, as opposed to, I think many of my constituents want to see that site developed as an urban building, developed as a building facing Connecticut Avenue, developed with serving all the public purposes that the site serves now, and also have affordable housing. But we are not going to be able to do it. We are better off chasing that goal if we get a surplus agreement that has at least the broad outlines of the deal and not a blank check to DemPed or the development team that wins the case.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I would not say maybe bystander was the wrong choice of words, but we're not full partners yet. And that's my goal.
Okay.
I'd like to just make the point that when we held our October 20th special public meeting, I specifically asked about the survey and if they would work together on it. And that is what they're doing, which I think is good. And I don't think that the process was completely established. So I think it is good that he's agreed that he's going to share the survey with us, because we have surveyed the community before. I mean, Lisa, you, me, and Michael worked on the survey for the Lafayette one. And, it is hard to ask the right questions, so it would be
That's why
nice
we need to be
see.
involved.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
good that we are, but they are working together first, because they have their mission, they have their budget already, and they're going to work together, which is what we asked them to do. So that's a good start, I think, than before.
Well, we can have, and the importance of this is to establish a game plan and expectations, and to make sure that our expectations are heard by the agencies. Because had we not had this meeting, I wouldn't have known that the 3 of the agencies had worked on the survey. I didn't know that. And I don't know if the community knew that. So we have to, as a commission, and I talked to Peter about this, I think the Zone and Design Development Committee needs to be intricately involved in getting a handle on this and making sure that, you know, we're aware of these issues. Right now, we're not. And that's troublesome. And we should not be an afterthought in terms of getting involvement. It's okay for them, obviously, to get the game plan going and start working on the survey, but there should have been somebody that said, oh, wow, maybe we need to get the ANC involved in this, you know, have the ANC look at the survey, like some of us mentioned in here, Michael mentioned in here. You know, that is definitely a bone of contention, and that should not have happened. And that is a separate issue from affordable housing on this lot. So if we don't, you know, think that we need to put something in writing, I'll put something in writing as single member district commissioner from 01.
Do we want to, I mean, the most effective way to do this, but God only knows when we're going to do it. I mean, is to call a special meeting and draft it, call a special meeting and get it out as soon as possible. Because we wait till the 12th, you know, I mean, is there any sentiment for that among commissioners? We can keep it short and sweet, but I mean, wow, don't all.
I mean, you know my sentiment. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a job that we're here to do.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to push for the community. And we know what the community is saying, and they've been saying it. So either we're going to continue to fight, you know, to make sure that we stay engaged and they stay engaged, or they're not.
Well, I'd be happy to try a first draft.
Okay, why don't you draft something, but I would suggest also that we check back with Gilles tomorrow
Tomorrow's fine.
and find out whether he's got an answer on whether they can change it or not.
Okay.
He said he would check. Let's stay on his back and see if he does.
Be happy to do that.
Okay. Peter, you gonna tackle that?
I'll draft. Yeah, I'll tackle it. Yep.
Okay. Next hot topic, Maret. I know. And just, you know, I don't know how many people are on here. We still have 111 participants on.
Lisa, let me just note, there is someone with her hand raised, Teddy Ann Galligan. I don't know when it's been raised. Oh, she took it down.
Okay.
So, okay.
I don't know how many people, I'm still seeing a hand. Randy.
Oh, yeah. Teddy Ann Galligan, it went down for a second. Shall I make her a panelist? Okay.
Yep. Teddy,
Yes, I'm here.
how are you?
I'm fine.
Good. You can speak. Go on.
Thanks so much. And thanks, everybody. I think it's pretty clear that people don't want it to just be bulldozed. I had commented because I remember the buildings being built and I participated in things there since I was 4 and my own children and everything. But something that's going on here is that it's a little, the whole approach is a little colonialist. You know, like it's a top down and it's being shoved at us as if they know what we want. And it's ironic in the district, right? Because that happens to us as a city all the time. And I think we need to stop that and you know, do appropriate back talk, because that's not the model of how this city's going forward. And it's appalling to me that so much be decided. And people had commented that a lot of his speech tonight was as if it were a foregone decision that it's surplus. It's not surplus. It's not surplus to us, and we're the ones who use it. You know, the whole area. So just, I think that the model of power is all wrong. And you know, everybody who's true to the district knows that we need to reject a colonial type of model, and this is a shadow of that. So it shouldn't happen.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Okay. All right. So our next topic is the Maret, discussion on the Maret Project Task Force member appointments. And I don't know how many people are staying on for that. We're still, I see some dropping off, but we're still over 100. Thank you all for attending so far, as much of the meeting as you have. And if you choose to stay on for this part of the discussion, thank you for that as well. John?
Okay, this is my assignment here.
Yep.
Just briefly, I think as most people know, the Episcopal Center for Children and the Maret School have entered into an agreement whereby Maret will lease the property behind the school, like about 4 or 5 acres, and will create a sports field. The issue came before the commission, and after a long proceeding, we approved it by a vote of 7-0. It was then taken to the Board of Zoning Assessment, where it was approved by the board by a 4-0 unanimous vote. As part of the BZA process, the commission struck an agreement, a memorandum of understanding with Maret related to the construction and operation of the field. That MOU provided for the creation of a task force related to the construction of the field. It is limited, the task force task is limited to the construction part of the field, covering a period before construction until a couple of months afterwards. The MOU provides that the construction committee task force be formed at a minimum 60 days before construction begins. We have heard from Maret that they are planning to do urban forestry work on the field, that they have permission to do that apart from the finalization of the BZA decision. The BZA has made a decision. It has not been publicly final until they actually put something out on paper. We don't know exactly when that's going to occur. But apart from that, and I'd like to have Trey Holloway speak to this for a minute, if he could. Maret has permission to begin tree work on the field, removal of some trees, movement of some heritage trees, and replacement of trees. And they have a contractor, I believe, and they have, sorry about that.
Can you shut it off?
Well, apologies. So apart from the finalization of the BZA order, Maret has contracted and is planning to do some significant urban tree work. This was mentioned before, and there was some feedback we got on that it was that should be that well, the tree work didn't count as construction, and we should not get going with either the task force or construction until the BZA order is finalized. We disagree with that on 2 grounds. One is that in the MOU, we classify tree work as construction. It's going to require heavy equipment. It's going to have some impacts. Reinforcing that is the request for a stay by Friends of the Field, which have very significant concerns about this and entered the case in opposition to the application. In their request for a stay last April, they also classified tree work as construction work. So it seems to me that we would be negligent if we didn't get this task force going to cover some of the impacts of the tree work. In the MOU, from beginning on page 14 and continuing to page 18, we list a number of aspects of construction work that need to be monitored, and which we would be monitored by the task force to make sure that these provisions are satisfied, and if not satisfied, what sort of resolution can be made with Maret and perhaps ECC to make sure that they are. Everything from making sure flagmen are in place when trucks come, to how debris will be collected and removed, to where the workmen will park. what kind of staging will take place, a whole raft, what hours will be used for construction. So in that sense, I think we're better off getting ahead of the game and creating that committee as soon as possible in anticipation, not just of the tree work, but for when the final agreement, the final decision is published. So in that, so we have some, we asked for some nominees. We got a pretty good response. And this afternoon, Randy, as a veteran of this process, because he did it with Ingleside, Lisa as the chair of the committee, chair of the commission, and myself as the single member district for the site, got together and we came to a roster of nominees for that task force. And we have selected Bruce Sherman, who's a resident of North Nebraska Avenue, and as you all know, he will be replacing me as the commissioner for this district. The next person would be Jim Nash. He is a resident of 33rd Street. He's in Randy's district, and he's elected the commissioner to replace Randy. Abe Clayman is a former commissioner. He was on Beach Street. He participated in the Ingleside project in a similar vein, and he has decided he's volunteered to sign on in a similar capacity for this project. Jenny Backus is a resident on Nebraska. Jenny and Bruce live on the same street. They both have good vision of what's happening at the project or not happening, to keep track of what's going on there and monitoring it. She is volunteered to be a member of the committee, a member of the task force. And Michael Osborne, who lives on 30th Place, who also participated in the Ingleside project in a similar vein, has volunteered. The MOU calls for 3 to 5 commissioners or their designates. So we have created a task force of 5 people for this purpose. I guess we can open it up now to discussion from the commissioners and from people in the audience if that's called for.
Do you want to hear from Trey too?
Trey, I would like to, yeah, he could perhaps give us just a few minutes to explain the urban forestry chunk of this.
Sure, I can do that. Thanks, John. So the Department of Urban Forestry from DDOT governs the tree work that we do. And when I say tree work, I'm talking about tree removal on the site as well as tree transplant. So there are separate permits for both tree removal and tree transplant, and we've obtained those. And so those are not contingent upon the BZA order. So the BZA order does not govern the tree work. That tree work could occur on the site without any of the things that we propose to do in terms of developing the site for the sports field. So we've started working with urban forestry probably a year and a half, 2 years ago to get their input and feedback. And then that culminated in us obtaining those permits. And as John mentioned, we would like to get that work going early next year in anticipation of a BZA order that's in line with the verbal approval that we already received from that body back in the springtime. As part of getting the permits, that means that urban forestry will be out kind of monitoring, taking a look at things as we do the tree work. So it's important to have that in place. So that's just a little bit of summary there on that.
Just to add more generally, the task force will be the channel for the community to bring up any issues that they see need attention regarding construction. It provides a kind of a forum, a convenient and coherent mechanism for people to monitor the project and a place to go for any neighbors who have concerns, rather than having kind of a scattershot approach and people making phone calls all over the place. The task force will be a central body to monitor that function.
Randy has his hand up.
Yeah, just a couple of points. One is the MOU is basically a contract between the ANC and Maret about how this is going to go forward. And we have some obligations and they have some obligations. And when they have determined that construction is going to start. That's basically their decision as to when construction starts. And we then have the obligation 60 days before that, 2 months before that, to designate a task force that would perform this monitoring function. And it really is just monitoring to make sure that the MOU is followed in every respect. And so if we're going to, as John mentioned, construction activities include tree removal. Maret has a permit to do that. They have a right to go forward with it. We, as the commission, have an obligation then 2 months before that to appoint the task force to do the monitoring. So it seems to me very straightforward that this is something we are obligated to do under the terms of the MOU. And so I think this is an appropriate time for us to do that. And we're just performing our duties under the MOU.
Let me just add one more thing to the monitoring process, which is obviously one of the functions here. But I have a vision for this task force, not just as reactive, monitoring, oh gosh, they did something wrong or they didn't do this, whatever. I would like to see it also be proactive, to kind of get ahead of the game, through the vehicle of the task force, to communicate to the community, to neighbors, what's going to happen, what. On Wednesday at 8 o'clock, the truck is going to show up with some gravel. Be ready for it. That sort of thing. Some kind of a calendar of events so that people know what's going on, when to expect it, and not be surprised by anything or concerned about anything. I think it could be a very creative and cooperative process. I'm got my fingers crossed that will happen with this new group.
Well, along we did precisely that Ingleside, in the Ingleside task force. And they gave us look ahead schedules for exactly what was going to come up. And then we communicated that through the task force out to the community. It even made announcements, I believe, at the ANC meetings about certain things that were coming up.
That would be a major positive.
That's going to be the important part of having a task force in place. And one of the things too, I think we should consider with the tree removal being considered construction, we want to have a body in place that can monitor that process, because we are talking about heritage trees. So we want to have a body in place that the community can go to with concerns over the removal or any issues that they see coming forward. So I think, all the things that have mentioned or that Commissioner Higgins and Commissioner Speck have mentioned give rise to the fact that we need to get the task force established immediately so that the construction can keep with its scheduled guidelines, which have been established.
Well, in line with that, and seeing no hands up among attendees, can I move the question?
Well, John should, but yeah.
Okay, I'm just encouraging.
Michael has a question. Michael, you're on mute.
So I have a question about the selection criteria for the task force. I realize he's going to become a new commissioner, and I mean no disrespect, but I don't understand how Bruce Sherman does not have a conflict as having been essentially a party litigant to this action, and which is still pending before the BZA and which will likely be appealed depending on what the decision of the BZA is. I just don't understand how, if this is a group of neutrals who are to evaluate compliance with a memorandum of understanding, how a party litigant is not conflicted out of it. And so I'd like to know from you guys how you decided that he doesn't have a conflict. I don't know if the same thing is true for Jenny, but certainly Bruce Sherman, who took the lead in this and continues to have a lead role in the Friends of the Field. I just don't see that as comporting with our obligations to just evaluate and not advocate or relitigate anything.
Well, I would hope that what you're saying at the end will be the task force will stay on task and it will not be a forum for relitigating. Jenny is a resident and also is Bruce. I totally understand where you're coming from, Michael, and as long as Friends of the Field is still going, that may be an element to explore with OANC and see what Ken would say about that. I don't know if we can make that decision.
Well, no, but I'm talking, John, about you made a decision to put them on. I believe that, sort of on the face of it, you're putting somebody into a role of a neutral who has been essentially an active litigant in the process. I don't understand how that decision was made, let alone go to ONC after the fact of the announcement for their opinion. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Let me
Well,
just
I think
let me just add one quick comment in there, Michael. This is the core teams, if you want to call us that. This is our recommendation. Obviously, the commission has to vote on that. So I just want to, make sure you understand that. This is
No, I understand that, Lisa. I'm just asking for the criteria by which you decided that having party litigant, at least one party litigant, and perhaps another in Jenny, be part of a process. She may just be a community member, and that's fine. Bruce is different. How you decided to put somebody who has still an ongoing role in the whole process that's under evaluation by the BZA and probably will go to the courts in this role as a neutral. I'll tell you now, I won't vote for, if we're voting for the slate, I'm voting against it. If we're voting one by one, I'm happy, with the others, but not with Bruce. I have nothing against him. I don't even know him, but I know what role he played. And I know that that's, in my view, inconsistent with what the task force was designed to do.
Well, just one point on that. Since the ECC is a constituent of his district, which will become his district in January, I think it's a little bit awkward not to have the commissioner for that district associated with it.
He's associated with it, John, by being on the ANC. And actually, I think that as an ANC commissioner, matters relating to the Maret ECC school that come before the commission, he should recuse himself because of the role he's played in the past. I don't see him having any role that's not a conflict with our obligations to the city as a whole, to be either on the task force or unrecused from anything that comes before the ANC.
Yes,
Yes.
Lisa, I just have to disagree. We all have interest, and we all had interests that were sharply expressed and deeply felt over a long period in the fall. And the task force, anybody in the task force has a view that they come with. Some are more strongly felt than others. And the task force operates by majority rule, and it's a place where disputes are going to get aired, and there'll be differences, and they don't have to act unanimously. But I just think the Friends of the Field is a real group, and having been associated with it shouldn't be a bar from public service.
I try to move the question, business again.
Discussion.
How are we voting? Are we voting commission, recommendation by recommendation, person by person, or are we voting for the slate?
We were looking at it as a slate, but I have no problem with going person by person, but
Yeah.
I wanted to get community comment as well. Chaz, you still have your hand up. Did you have another comment?
No, I meant to take it down.
Okay. Are
Sorry.
there any comments from the community? I see 2 people have their hands raised, or 3.
Just one second. Let's,
Bruce, Claudia, and Nancy.
okay, I'll elevate them.
If you can turn on your video, then the video recording will be able to capture you. Yeah, thank you.
I'll start in the order that I called you all. So Bruce, Claudia, then Nancy. Bruce, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, and good evening, everyone. Just in response to Commissioner Zeldin's remark about a conflict, I want to make it known tonight that I have resigned from the steering committee of Friends of the Field. And as a newly elected commissioner, will be representing the district in a completely different capacity than that in which I served previously as a citizen, expressing my views as any citizen would do on a matter before our neighborhood. So just to be very clear about that. Also, I understand the MOU to be a matter of compliance, and that anyone serving on the task force will be looking at compliance with the MOU, not rewriting the MOU.
Thank you, Bruce. Claudia? Claudia, can you come off mute and make your comment? Okay, Nancy? Nancy, go ahead.
Here I am. I'm sorry. I'm not used to doing this on myself. I had a few questions that I posed on Sunday, which is probably too late to answer them prior to the meeting. But my questions are, there was criteria that was established by John Higgins, Commissioner Higgins, and I was wondering how these candidates were chosen relative to this criteria. One of them was proximity to the field. And as I look at this, we only have 2 people who are close to the field. Another one was any prior involvement with Maret ECC project. And of course, everybody's been involved. So I didn't understand that criteria. Another criteria was any expertise related to the project. And then finally, the potential conflict with related parties. So I was wondering if that could be explained relative to those that have been chosen so that we do have the cross-section based on the criteria that John established.
Thanks, Claudia. John?
Yeah, Claudia, I did not see those as necessarily criteria. Transparency has been a big part of this issue. So we wanted people to just give us some information about themselves and any kind of relationship they may have had with the project in the past, just for transparency's sake. It wasn't necessarily a criteria. If you live, 8 blocks away, you can't be a member, or if you so forth, something like that. The fact that I think some of these people, like Abe and Michael, had experience, I think that was a I don't know if we call it a criteria, but we saw that as a factor that would enhance the performance of the task force because of their experience. And one more thing you brought up in your memo the other day, I misused the term ex officio, and Commissioner Cadwell reminded me about that. So that's really not a factor. This is supposed to be a cooperative group. It'll have the task force. Maret has nominated their spokesperson or their representative, construction representative, who will be seated at the meetings. Prior to this, we had our task force. The ANC was kind of in the middle between Maret and Friends of the Field to some degree. we thought that appropriate in terms of the regulatory process and the permitting process. But I think now that it's been decided, that the parties can kind of, as Bruce mentioned, kind of sit together and address the compliance aspects in a cooperative way. So that was the goal. It really was not a criteria context.
Okay, could you explain ex officio?
No,
Could someone,
I'm gonna have to go back to my Roberts rules and double check that.
well, it
All
was-
I know is in the dialogue with Chaz, I was a little bit off base there.
well,
Quite
could
simply,
someone,
Claudia,
yes,
there will be 5 voting members on the task force. No one else, other people can attend because we're gonna need to get information from them, from Array, for instance, or the contractor. ECC sometimes too might attend, but there are only 5 members of the task force who have any voting authority.
okay, thank you very much.
I think Randy mentioned in the process of this that during the whole time the Ingleside task force was going out, there were no votes. People cooperated. They worked stuff out.
Claudia, Nancy?
Trouble unmuting. Thank you, Chairwoman Gore. So I was heartened in the last dialogue about the library and about the community center to hear Commissioner Zeldin remark, our commission turns over in January, and to emphasize the importance of, on decisions that are important, taking time. I was heartened also to hear you, Chairwoman, say we're supposed to push for the community. We know what they've been saying. I just wanted to express how extremely disappointing it is not to have a single community.
You lost your sound. Nancy?
Yeah, can you hear me?
There you go, there you go. Yeah.
Not to have a single community member who lives closest to where this construction will take place beyond this task force, because the people who live the closest to where this construction will take place are those who are most affected by it. And it is a slap in the face to those community members to hear the completely different approach taken in this case on an issue that's important, which is the composition of the construction task force, to take a completely different approach from what we just heard you all saying not 20 minutes ago. I had a question.
I'm sorry, but.
And I want to read from the MOU.
Excuse me, Nancy,
Yes.
isn't Jenny Bacchus, doesn't she live right next to the field?
And Bruce lives right next to Jenny
I'm
Bacchus.
not sure- I'm
They
not
live
sure what-
across the street.
So I'm
they
not sure
live
what you're
across the
saying.
street.
I'm not sure what you're.
What I'm
upset
saying,
about when you have. when
there
the slate that has
there are
been
community
proposed.
members whose property touch this field.
Yes, you've got if this slate is approved, you've got 2 of 5 people whose property and who have been active in this whole process. I'm not sure what your complaint is.
Who may be disqualified
Well, if I had my
based
way,
on
one
your
would be.
remarks,
Yeah, I think
who you
so.
would like to disqualify.
Which is not to
I'd
say
like to
that,
read from the.
which is not
the
to say that
MOU.
another neighbor wouldn't replace that person.
I beg your pardon? The neighbors that you have, and there are 2 neighbors, and I don't understand this, and maybe you can explain, who are nominated to, who are on your slate that don't live right next to where this construction will take place.
Because
And
this,
only
the
because
view,
they were involved in Ingleside, I suppose.
just to be clear, this Maret ECC development has citywide and ANC-wide implications. This is not something that is solely in the purview of those who live nearby.
Are we doing home surveys citywide for home damage? I don't think so. We're talking about construction.
Nancy, I'm gonna let you talk, but one of the things I'm gonna go by here is the rules. So I know this is a hot topic and you are very passionate about it, but I will ask you and Commissioner Zeldin to let one another talk, because right now you're kind of talking over each other. So let him get,
I'm
let him
done
get
talk-
through.
Okay, I'm
let
done,
him get
Lisa.
through. Okay, so Nancy, go on. Go on and unmute yourself and finish your statement. Okay, go on.
Unmuted now.
Yeah.
From the MOU, all construction activities on the ECC Maret property shall be undertaken in a manner, this is all construction activities, shall be undertaken in a manner that is consistent with all conditions of the BZA order. Can somebody explain how that occurs when we don't have the BZA order? We have a task force and we are rushing to put together a task force who will oversee construction activities. Construction activities that have to be undertaken in a manner consistent with an order that we don't have. So can you please walk the public through the timing on that?
The whole
What
point,
is the rush for the task force when we have no order? We asked this question actually in the prior meeting as well.
the whole point of the 60 days is minimum. It could have been 90 days. You could have set it up 100 days ago. I think getting the committee, getting the task force together prior to the issuance of the final order so that the task force members can get familiar with the MOU, talk to Maret about construction process, talk to Maret also on a proactive basis that I spoke of and that Randy spoke of when they did with Ingleside. You get timetables and schedules and so forth. I don't see that as being a negative. I think, I think that enhances the capability of the task force when the construction begins.
So the task force will have a conversation then about all of this without any knowledge at all of the conditions of the order.
The condition, the MOU is what it is. There are, aside from the order, there are, as I said, stipulations in the MOU related to construction. That's what the task force is doing. And doesn't necessarily, hours of workers and where the trash is going to be placed. All that's not going to be addressed in the BZA order, but it is addressed in the MOU, because part of the thinking of the ANC was, are there things that we need to address, can address, to mitigate some things which are not covered by the BZA, and this is exactly what that purpose is for.
Yeah, the BZA order, in their oral order, when they were talking about it, they said they didn't think they would have jurisdiction over construction.
I remember.
And so this MOU covers construction. And specifically, if you look on page 13, it defines construction activities as including but not limited to digging, leveling, movement of equipment, tree removal, and replacement. And so once that is triggered, that is construction activity. We have to have in place 60 days or two months before that, the task force. So it's just implementing the MOU. It doesn't have anything to do with the BZA order.
The MOU has lots to do with the BZA order. It's right in here.
Granted, but not the construction part.
Except for all construction activities. I'm reading from page 18, Randy, right at the top, section C.
Well,
all construction activities shall be undertaken in a manner that is consistent with all the conditions of the BZA order, which we don't have. That doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't make any sense to configure and appoint this task force when it's so prematurely, and particularly with a lame duck ANC. This ANC is going to be almost completely different members come January. Why won't you wait?
We can't wait. The MOU requires us.
And the MOU, in your view, is binding on the public?
It's binding on the ANC.
and it's binding on Maret. And it includes conditions that Maret has to abide by, and the task force's purpose is to be sure they abide by them. What is the mystery here? I think we ought to call the question.
Just to be clear too, the new commission could change the task force members if they want. There's no prohibition on that. The ANC can designate whoever they want as the task force, and they can change it if they want to next year. But right now, the way I read the MOU, we are bound to designate the task force 2 months before construction starts. And construction includes moving trees.
I want to hear from Akash. Thank you, Nancy.
Hi, Chairperson. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My name's Akash Sekar. Many of you may know me. I'm a trustee at Maret, 2 kids there. I also happen to live in ANC 3/4G. A couple quick comments that may help address some of the questions or concerns. First, I just want to say congratulations and a thank you to Bruce. I just appreciated the comments that he just made because we do need, partners who will collaborate. He is the incoming single member ANC, and so we certainly hope that we can collaborate in a way that is works well for all folks. I have served, just a little perspective for folks, regardless of what your view on this might be. I have served on task forces both as a community member and also as a real estate developer in an ex officio capacity, if you will. And what I can tell you, and I hope this calms concerns, is if you have a good partner, and I can attest that Maret will be and is a good partner, this is nuts and bolts work. And by that I mean, if Nancy, for example, has an issue with some construction activity that is being done close to her house that is not in accord with best practices, city practices, forthcoming BZA order, tree permits that have already been issued, then you let a task force member know, and we promptly jump on it and work collaboratively together to address it. So someone made a fair point, which is that a task force like this is not meant to relitigate concerns, grievances, or other with regard to the project. But I can assure you, in my capacity as a trustee at Maret, we have every intention of doing everything we can to ensure that the work is being done with best practices and frankly mitigating concerns or issues, even if there's work being done in a certain period of time and it's within the hours of time that it makes sense. We've been asked because there's a community event or whatever that maybe can you not work on this and such day. And so this group, I think, will be very good to address concerns like that. And frankly, the sooner they're pulled together, particularly given the tree work that we're starting, the better off that we are in terms of starting off on the right foot. So last comment I'll make is, I know that there have been disagreements with Friends of the Field. My hope, and this is just a hope, is that, now that we are through the BZA process and we'll get that order soon, that we can sort of work collaboratively in good faith to make this work as best as it can for all folks involved. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Looking forward to working together with all of you.
Okay. Commissioners, if there's no more discussion, like Peter, or well, Michael, go on.
I just wanted to make one remark in response to Bruce Sherman's observations that he's now neutral. Just 6 days ago on the Chevy Chase listserv, he told the ANC that we should stand down from creating this task force, that he doesn't believe that it's appropriate at this time. So as of 6 days ago, he's still advocating. And I just don't see how an advocate can fulfill the job of a third party neutral. When he becomes an ANC commissioner, I still believe that his past involvement in this creates a conflict from which he should have to recuse himself.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, well, I'd like to move that the commission adopt the task force we'll create the task force as noted in my memo that I sent earlier today. If it's the wishes of the commissioners to vote individually for each member, I would condone that. So I would move that we adopt the task force and that we vote on each member by member. And I guess, Lisa, you can just call them up and we can vote.
So we're having two votes, one that we're creating the task force, that we vote, yes, we believe that that it's appropriate to create the task force now. And then two, we're voting on the individual members who will participate in that task force. Is that
That's well put, good.
Yes, but it's not. So the vote, so it is for the task force 5-member, and then we're voting on the individual members as opposed to voting by a slate.
Right, so we're voting, do we want to create a task force? We think the answer to that is yes, that we're obliged to create that under the MOU. So we're going to vote yay or nay on that. And then we're going to vote one by one on the people that the slate recommend. Okay.
Bruce Sherman has raised his hand.
Okay, and so we're still in the discussion phase. While we bring Bruce back up, because I do think we should allow him to speak. John, can you just work a little bit on that wording, because we're going to have to put this in the minutes. It should be a clear motion.
Okay. Give me a minute. Give me a minute.
Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Gore. Just to clarify further, my post of 6 days ago was about the timing of the task force. I think I made that very clear. I do have a question or a comment that I think it's important for the commission to address, and that is just as a practical matter. Given the anticipated tree work at the end of January, with what will then be a irretrievably altered landscape at the Episcopal Center for Children, and given the fact that there has not yet been a BZA order, is there concern that this work could happen, the tree work could happen, and then there would be something that would prevent the construction, whether it is an appeal of the BZA order or some other measure, and that then there would be a circumstance of an indeterminate period of time, indefinite potentially, when nothing is happening and the landscape is barren? Does this present a concern to the commission or to Maret or anyone else?
Trey.
Yeah. So my response to that would be that I would go back to what I explained at the beginning, which was that the tree work approved by Urban Forestry is separate and apart from our BZA application to develop the field. So for example, this work, ECC could have undertaken this work by themselves to prepare the site for another lessee, and they would not have to go through a public BZA process. So there is not sense in coupling those together to say, for example, should there be an appeal or a stay that holds up the project, should we not do the tree work now? Like those are two completely different and separate things that don't impact each other. It is essentially a by right piece of work that can be undertaken on the property.
And Trey, I would say to that I certainly understand that distinction. I would only recall comments you made at the November 14th meeting between the tree work on the one hand and what you at the time defined as construction on the other, which was, you mentioned, use the example of building the parking lot as actual construction, that the tree work in your view was not construction. I don't know if you'd want to clarify that further now.
I believe what I said is that the parking lot was an example of something that is governed by the BZA order, for example. So the parking lots in the front yard of the property, that is part of the special exception for which we had to apply. The tree work is not a special exception. I believe that's what I said at the 14th meeting.
Could I ask Trey a question? So besides taking down trees, you're going to move some very large trees. Is that correct?
Yes.
So could you describe for me, just for a moment, a piece of equipment that picks up a 80-foot or 80-inch girth tree or a 100-inch girth heritage tree and moves it? What's that look like?
I will do my best.
Is it a piece of is it a piece of heavy equipment?
Yeah, it's a pretty heavy piece of equipment.
So
Essentially,
there's going to be heavy equipment moving on that site.
Mhm.
And I'm a little confused about why we wouldn't want to have monitors for that sort of activity, whatever the niceties are of what we call it, or whether Trey called it one thing on November 14th, and there's now some dispute about whether he's calling it something else. This is not faux heavy work on the site, and it's the sort of thing that we have a responsibility, having reached an agreement memo with Maret, to be sure they comply with.
Can I just echo what Akash said too? Maret has every intention of doing the right thing by neighbors and in the neighborhood. And to your point, Peter, yes, like, can you get into semantics about what to call this or what we've called that? What we sought to do was kind of say, hey, commission, earlier this fall, we said, hey, commission, this is kind of what we're thinking in terms of our start date, is, cutting down trees, construction, we don't know, moving trees, is that construction? I don't know. Anyway, let's all be on the safe side of this and try to get this organized because we're going to be out here doing work. As Nancy mentioned, the surveys, and we're trying to get these things done in advance of when we anticipate it, just to try to be completely as above board as we can possibly be on this. We're not trying to skirt around anything and say, hey, cutting down trees is not construction. We don't need the task force, right? We don't need any oversight. That's the complete opposite of what we're trying to do, which is why we're here tonight. And of course, we're in favor of having this task force put together and having the members on it and having the first meeting as soon as we can.
Okay, could we move on with this?
Yeah, I've got some language, Lisa. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. Resolve that ANC 34G create the task force associated with the ECC field project in accordance with the memorandum of understanding between the ANC and Maret School. Discussion? Second, discussion, vote.
All those in favor? Okay, 6-0.
7.
I'm sorry, 7.
We're
And then
so lame
5,
duck that the numbers are going
guess,
down.
5 separate resolutions. Resolve that Bruce Sherman be approved to the ECC task force.
Second.
All
Vote.
those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, raise your hand. Abstentions. 6-1-0.
Resolve that Abe Claimant be approved for the ECC project task force.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand. 7-0.
Resolve that Jim Nash be approved for the ECC project task force.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand. 7-0.
Resolve that Michael Osborne be approved for the ECC project task force.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand. 7-0.
And finally, resolve that Jenny Backus be approved for the ECC project task force.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand. 7-0.
The only thing I ask for the record is I'd like to know the date that Bruce Sherman resigned from the Friends of the Field Steering Committee. And if he can put that in the chat, I would like that to be a part of the minutes.
Thank you, commissioners, for that vote and discussion and community members. And Bruce, if you could drop that in the chat, we'll add that to our record. ANC committee report. So the first standing committee report we'll hear from is zoning, design, and development with Commissioner Gosselin.
Yeah, just very quickly, I will get material out by the end of this week, mimicking Lisa's membership solicitation request or membership solicitation for 2 more members for that committee. We will need to get another meeting going soon, and I apologize for the slowness. Way slower than a lot of the events that we're having to deal with, which is too bad. Anyways, that's my report.
Okay, thank you. And then the Racial and Social Equity Standing Committee report, I will give you guys a brief on that. So I put out the solicitation that Peter just mentioned. So many, here it is. That went out on the Chevy Chase listserv and other social media sites on November 21st. And the solicitation period ends January 5th. So that's a 45-day. And then we'll appoint them at our regular occurring meeting in January. So the first meeting in January, which I believe is the 9th. And it pretty much just talks about what the committee is trying to advance. So it gives the community a little description about that. And we have already received a few new members that are requesting membership on that committee, and a bunch of our old folks are returning. So I think we're in great shape. Very happy about that. The next meeting, we had a meeting on November 15th. That went very well. We discussed a bunch of topics, including the Common Ground Act of 2022, which is legislation proposed by at-large council member Robert White. And it is legislation.
Lo and behold.
I should have said this at the beginning of the meeting. On the use and disposition of public lands. So I did get a response back from the council member's office, and they are excited to talk to the community. So I haven't responded back to them to give them date and time. So that might be a meeting for the ANC if we could fit it in. I think that might be great, given what we're talking about now. Or we might have it at the race meeting. Regardless of where we have it, we will post it, and hopefully the community will come out and attend. But I think that's some really interesting legislation that he's got, and he's willing to give us a personal purview of it, which is great.
Could I just ask a question with that regard to that? Would you consider either having as a separate meeting or with Councilmember White, Councilmember Louis George talking about New Green Deal for social housing? That they had a 9-hour hearing.
Yes, I watched every minute.
So you could go on tonight for just forever. So anyways, I think that we would do well to learn the prospects for that legislation and some of the guts of it. I don't know enough on the subject, so.
Yeah, we can look at some ways on how to do that, because maybe even hosting a separate community listening session where they both go into that legislation. And I think with the Green New Deal, and hopefully people that have watched the hearing will also agree, there is tremendous testimony. There was so many community experts on all aspects of housing and developing housing. There's a lot that she can go into in addition to just her proposed legislation. There is a lot of great feedback for that particular piece of legislation. So I don't know if it's going to get marked up or what's the status going to be, but we might, just decide to hold something, a separate listening session outside of, our meetings where we're so tied up with time.
Good.
That's a great idea. I'll make note of that. The committee also submitted their accomplishments to date, which Randy put in the annual report, and Connie has posted the draft online. So the race committee has done a lot of outstanding work, and I'm very grateful for them for looking at, and I think their work is courageous because they take issues that are not necessarily not challenging, they're challenging issues, and they are looking at them through an equity lens. And sometimes that's challenging to get people to understand, even what that equity lens looks like and how to produce a product based on it. So they're doing great work that I don't see any other ANC in this city doing. That's, exhibited by the accomplishments that we submitted. They are also currently working on recommendations for the incoming ANC. So we've discussed a lot about the ANC transitioning. So they do have recommendations for the incoming commission. We also discussed a excellent program that we're going to take up with Chevy Chase. Oh goodness, historic Chevy Chase.
Chevy Chase, DC.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Where they are going to be doing, and I believe it's the 100 and I don't want to get the date wrong, but Lafayette. So Mr. Pointer's family is coming up on a anniversary, and it is a large one. I want to say 200 years, 250. I can't remember. But they are talking about thank you, Carl, 250 year anniversary of their family being on, Chevy Chase land and being expelled from that land. So they are putting together a fabulous program to highlight that 250 year anniversary, and Race will partner with them in doing that. And it's just, Carl gave us an overview of it, and I think this community is going to love it. It's fabulous. And I talked about the membership recruitment. So, and then the last thing that I have on the agenda here that I talk about is a resolution on an analysis of the demographics and the resulting changes of historic districts. So this resolution basically is asking that historic districts, the data from historic districts be analyzed to see if there is any demographic demographic changes to basically minorities in the community. So that is work from Bob Ward that has been looking at DC data. And it's also based on work that I think it's Andrew McCabe has done in New York, which he's done a lot of research on that. Chas, did I say the right name? Is it Andrew or Bob?
Bob Ward and Andrew McCabe.
No, it's Bob Ward, and I think it's Andrew McCabe.
It's Brian McCabe.
Brian, thank you. And Brian is currently, deputy secretary for a department in HUD that's called PD&R, so Policy Development and Research. And throughout my career in the IG's office on the investigative side, we work extremely closely with PD&R, and they are just sharp data experts. So I'm really impressed with the research he's done out of New York. So we are still in a draft of that resolution. It does not take a position on historic districts. We're not saying they're good, they're bad, otherwise, but it's looking at the outcome of historic districts from the racial equity lens. So does having a historic district in place cause a change in demographics, particularly racial demographics? So I think that's just also another outstanding way to kind of look at our community and some of the things we do from the equity lens. I am desperately trying to get that resolution to you guys in draft, so you'll have it 7 days in advance of the December 12th meeting. And once we get that drafted, I'll try to get it to you sooner so that we can actually put it up on the website within that 7-day time frame, so that we can get community input for the resolution. And that's all the update I have on race. Do you guys have any questions about any of that I discussed? Okay, I was trying to go fast and it was so much this time.
So Lisa, when you have those meetings, we have a dedicated page for race, so we should put those meetings up in the agenda. And if it's recorded, that should be up there as well.
Okay. Let's see. Have we not had the agendas up there?
Not all of them. So if they're available, we should put them up. But not this November 15th one. I didn't see it.
I'll get it to you. And the last thing that we are also working on is a meeting with Dr. Hewitt, who is we're trying to talk to her about, I'm just trying to find her exact title. About the upcoming, well, actually quite a few things, but one of the things that we wanted to meet and talk with her about is the equity plan that the mayor just released and some of the issues that we're exploring here in on the committee. So we'll hopefully have a meeting with her coming up soon as well. But all of that will be posted. We'll put it up on our page and announce it to the community so everybody's aware. Any questions on that, you guys? Okay, thank you. And yep, Mary Routes, you're right. Brian has studied them in New York City, but not in DC. But he's done excellent work in that area. And we can, you know, we can look at that and see if we see potential similarities between the jurisdictions and make recommendations based on that. All right, so we will move on to commission business, and I will turn this over to Peter to go over the minutes first.
Yeah, I've done the November 14th minutes, taken edits from Connie and Lisa. I got the typo of the Verizon amount corrected. And with those things corrected, I move that we approve the November 14th minutes.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands.
Okay, and let me just say, on Sunday evening, as I finished those, he messaged me and reminded me that we had a public hearing with DemPed about the community center. For some reason, I just thought, well, it's a different kind of meeting, and just never did minutes. So I will get to them. I'd hope to avoid it for 2 weeks, but I will get them done this week or this coming weekend. Okay.
And so there is a comment in the chat about posting them to the listserv. As you know, they're posted on our website, so as soon as we can, you get those posted up. And we generally post the video chat.
We always post the video chat.
Yeah.
I've just not been good about posting the minutes. So I mean, I'll post them on I'll try to start posting them on all the local listservs, all the local social media.
Well, no.
No?
I'm not asking you to do that at all.
All right.
Posting them on a website is fine. And the Office of ANC just had a ruling that video recordings are a recording of the record. So the video, I think it's great, you know, to send it out there, but we are handling all the administrative work by ourselves for the commission. So we got to balance that, you know, with what we're trying to do in terms of, you know, handling our single member districts and then handling these big major issues as well. So, I mean, I think
it's a one-stop shop. The
Yeah,
meeting information page has everything for every meeting, and
Yeah.
I've made sure that the minutes are accessible on the meeting information page as well as under the documentation tab. They're all there. So if anyone wants anything, they can go there and take a look.
yeah. And that's where we want to drive the traffic. And for just what Connie said, everything is there. So the minutes only give you this, but you know, there might be
Right.
resolutions under there. And then, you know, like with the topic that we just discussed at the top of the meeting, Peter's letter is going to be, there's going to be a lot of the meeting detail on that particular site. So that's what we want everybody to see.
Okay.
Okay. Don't stress yourself, Peter. Stay with me. I need
Zen. Okay.
All right, John, check.
Checks for tonight, we have a payment to reimburse Lisa Gore for $290.43 for MailChimp. 12 months of MailChimp.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, John. And
Second.
the next one is Verizon for $155.98.
Okay. So you're moving?
So I move approval for those two
Second.
expenditures.
All those in favor, raise your hand. 7-0. All right. Randy, John, did you have anything? Okay,
Well, we have budget, we have the budget.
yes, thank you.
I submitted a small and short report to all the commissioners about our budget for fiscal 2023. Right now, we have a beginning balance of 35,828. We anticipate allotments of 18,876. Actually, one of those 4 payments has come in already. So we'll have a sources of funds for the entire year next year is estimated at $54,704. After expenses, we budgeted to have a surplus next year of $12,704. The expenses have all been outlined in a memo to the commission, which I guess will go into the minutes. So for public disclosure, unless you want me to run them all down right now. But if there's nothing else or no discussion, we can move approval of the budget. I did put in, as I mentioned, a pretty hefty amount for personnel in case we hire somebody, and another significant amount of money for purchase of service for a contract employee. We can fiddle with that back and forth. As long as they're both in the budget and we stay within the overall budget, then we're okay to get assistance in either form.
So one comment, and I don't know if John, you had a chance on that to see that email. So we can approve the budget on the 12th and still be in compliance with Office of ANC. And the only reason I'll bring this up again is the community comment period on the budget, which would be maybe a first time that we're doing it, but it would give our new commissioners incoming a little bit of a chance to weigh in. And I'm specifically thinking about the public engagement piece to see how we can maybe weigh in just a little bit more on the development of how we can purchase or what we can do in terms of engagement with the community. We got a lot of big stuff coming up.
Yeah, I put, you can see the difference between on the communications. I increased that from 4,700 to 7,500, which could take care of software and things like that. We could increase that more if you'd like, but I did recognize that and put something in for that.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about giving folks an opportunity to weigh in on budget priorities. So,
But for this budget, are you suggesting we just post it for the next 2 weeks to the December 12th meeting? Or are you suggesting something more elaborate? For this budget, this time?
I know, I think I could do something more elaborate, but I am more than happy to not do that. Yeah, I mean, like,
let's have another meeting.
Can we just, well, I think Connie, you've got my memo. We could post that on the website.
yeah,
We can certainly put it right in the meeting information page, and if there's another place, I can certainly put it. I
what's
mean,
new?
our annual report certainly has, is under, each annual report that we produce is under the documentation tab of annual reports. I can certainly have a notification on the homepage saying that this is our FY 2023 budget, and to put an email address. It could be the general address or could be specific to John for any comments to be sent to him for a period of time. So let me know what you want to do. Let's decide on that, and then we can make that happen.
I
You
like
could post, you could post the memo I sent around with my email as a response email.
Okay, would you like that on the homepage? Is that
Yeah, sure.
okay? All right, I'll put it both on the meeting information page and the homepage.
And then we'll finalize it on the 12th.
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't need to vote tonight.
Thank you so much. Chas?
I'm not proposing this as an amendment to the budget. I want to keep that simple, but I think I do note that it leaves a surplus of plans for the end of next year as well. And I think that the new commission ought to look seriously at if the city doesn't provide it, technology to let us do hybrid meetings. I looked into this, and for about $10,000, you can get a really snazzy system. But getting some professional advice is probably better than just my hour on the web. But I think there's lots of demand that we have the in-person meetings and, but we had 140 people. We'd never get to the community center tonight if we could be hybrid.
Yeah.
And so I think that, I don't know who among our new members, your new members is going to be the techie, but somebody ought to help us look into that.
I agree.
Yeah, and let me just emphasize again, OANC has been working on this and they're supposed to have the equipment. They're
Right.
supposed to provide it, but don't count on it.
Right.
We'll have to be here when Michael comes back.
Will they reimburse us?
They will not reimburse us, no.
Okay.
Oh, one thing, Lisa, as long as we're talking about money, you have any time this week to go to the bank and do the debit card?
Yeah, I'm definitely on time. Yeah.
Okay, I'll be in touch.
Okay. Connie?
I just have one question, John, on the budget. I don't remember for the grants. What did you budget for
A
2023?
grant's $10,000.
Okay, so if we do have a surplus, I do think that maybe reaching out to the community would be good on what the selection criteria is and what the deadlines are. And, you know, these are the kinds of questions. You see, I think if we just put the budget out with no questions, it's kind of hard for the community to know what do
Right.
they say about it. So I think perhaps if we can work on this just a little bit more, you know, there should be 3 questions, you know, something like this. Would you like to see what exactly? I think we should have that. And that's what I'm trying to propose. And I don't have the exact language, but maybe this is something that we can do and then I can post it. And the other thing is, you know, Randy, you've worked pretty hard with OANC with that. I can't remember the name of that organization any longer. That's supposed to help us with communicating, you know, with
Lab, yeah.
Citizens Lab, right?
Citizens
So,
Lab.
right. So, you know, my feeling about that work is that even if OANC has puts together a contract, on our end, there needs to be a person that does that work. You know, it's a lot of work. So in terms of the staffing, I doubt that an executive administrative assistant could help us with all of this stuff. So I recommend that we add some money for that part of it, because we need to have that part of it. There's got to be someone to help us on that. Unless, you know, 7 commissioners can do chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, webmaster. I mean, like, this is a lot for a volunteer group. So
Well,
I would like for us to consider that.
the total amount between personnel and purchase of service is $23,500. I don't know if we need to add any more than that. You know, I see those 2 categories as the sources for providing the means, you know, for office assistance, web assistance, whatever it might be. I mean, do you think we need to do more than 23,000?
We might, John. I was looking at that too. And it might be a little low. I think 3, when we were talking of combining with other ANCs to solicit for assistance, I believe the hourly rate they wanted to advertise is 30 to 35 an hour. But at the same time, Office of ANC talked about getting interns to commissions. And I did submit a request, pretty much the language we had used in this other solicitation to try to get us an intern. So I still haven't heard back from that. I've reached out to them to figure out where they are and they have not responded. So we might have to bump it and just, you know, give our.
Well, we don't have to make that decision tonight if we're going to finalize it on the 12th.
We don't. And
Okay.
Connie, just to let you know, if you check that link that I just put in the chat, there are a couple of ANCs that I think do a really good job of soliciting the community on their budget. And I put in the Google document that I think it's 8A does. There is also one that is very similar, I believe, a Ward 2 ANC, Ward 1, I believe it's Ward 1, that does the same thing. Maybe we can use some of those questions, and it's a Google form, and, you know, put down what, you know, our priorities we think the community might look into, like the equipment Chaz mentioned for a public meeting, and just just let them answer and.
I mean, I am happy to post whatever, but I don't want to be responsible for putting a survey together on the budget. I'm just trying to say that we do need to think about this
Yeah.
for next year, especially because we have a surplus and because we have needs. So, you know, 23,000, I think what John budgeted was for regular kind of staffing. And I'm saying if we actually have Citizens Lab, we're really going to need this person to maybe, or another person to help with this effort. And so perhaps we should think about that and putting that in, and it doesn't have to be right from January on. It could be, you know, starting in the spring, let's say, if we think ANC is really going to put this contract together. But I think we definitely need help. And certainly the webmastering, I am going to give up my seat, and that means I'm not going to be webmaster any longer. And I could give that duty to you, Lisa, but someone will have to do this. It is not an insignificant amount of work to get it right. That's
Yep,
all.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're into our third hour.
Yep.
Well, we're accomplishing a lot. So these are important discussions. Anything else on the budget? John?
No,
Okay, Randy, annual report?
Yeah, I drafted the annual report, which we do every year. I look back at the ones we've done in the past, and they were 6 pages, 7 pages, 8 pages, and now 11 pages. So we're doing more and more every year, it seems. But the reports are required by statute to be done by December 1st. And there's a list of people who have to get copies of it. I have never gotten any feedback from anyone that they've ever read it. So I have no idea whether it ever gets read by anybody, but it does offer a pretty good summary of all the things that we did this last year, which were very substantial. So I would move that we adopt the annual report and distribute it as required by the statute.
Second.
7-0.
And thank you, Carl, for saying that you will read the report.
And for that, I think we should give him a little quiz at the end of his reading.
He may be the very first one who's ever read it.
If we ever learn what ex officio means, we can make him ex officio something.
I will just mention one thing too. I have suggested to the OANC that it would be a very good way to look and see what ANCs are actually doing if they would look at these annual reports and do some kind of compilation. I've got no interest in that.
But you know, I think the new OANC director is extremely responsive.
Yep.
Kent, suppose he's wonderful.
So
I
that's
sent
a
an
second
email.
reader.
Oh, good. I'm glad we have a second reader. What did you read? Okay. Anyway, you were correct. You're saying that, but I think Kent, I've sent him an email. I've gotten a response right away. I've gotten further responses, not even asking for it. He's very
Yeah,
good. And I think
I agree. I think he's going to
Yeah.
be very.
so. I'm really excited about having him there. I think we'll get more done. And that's a good thing. I do want to just respond to one more thing to a comment that's on the chat by Tom. I want to say that whenever we have a meeting, I post it on our website, I post it on our Facebook page, I post it on Chevy Chase Chatter, I post it, other people post on Nextdoor and Chevy Chase Listserv and so forth. So we are trying to get this out. But by now, after, you know, at least a year and a half, almost 2 years, we do have meeting information pages where people really can go, and we have meetings twice a month. So, you know, the stuff is on there. I mean, the materials are there. So people should go to our website and look. We've tried to do a good job of being comprehensive and transparent and open.
And that's the importance about driving people to the website. Because that is where the traffic needs to go. That's where we're compiling information. That's where we're putting, you know, all the things that the community needs to know, and we're going to build upon that. The listserv is just a really small fraction of what information that we have in terms of what we're doing. And we just got to keep trying to do that. And the commission is doing a good job, given everything that we have going on. We're managing a lot.
Are we adjourned?
No. So possible items for discussion on December 12th, which is our next meeting, the resolution on the historic district. And then we have Connie, your topic on 5800 Nevada, the Green Alley. We still
Yeah,
have-
this is an update to the Broad Branch and oh my God, what is it called? It's so late now. Give me 1 second here. It is the Broad Branch. I got it here. Okay, sorry. It's the Broad Branch and Spring Valley Stormwater Retrofit Project. Several of us were, we sat in on the public meeting. After that public meeting, I talked about 5800 Nevada Avenue, that alleyway that's between Nevada and Chevy Chase Parkway, that should be redone because the drain is only on the bottom and it's not at the top. And there's been just so much flooding of houses on the east side, on the Nevada side. And they have now included that alley in their 35% project. So it's like moving forward in steps. So we're still in it. And I'd like them to give us an update so that we have an idea so that the new commissioners can continue and to go with it, to move forward and to know what the next steps are. So I just sent out an email before tonight, again, trying to confirm that they will be there. And I will let you know, Lisa. But that's one thing that's very important to my SMD. This has been years long of flooding and it just cannot continue.
Okay. All right. And then lastly, a reminder for the admin meeting on December 1st.
Right.
Does anyone have anything else? All right, so now we are adjourned, Peter.
Okay, don't
Now
go.
we go through the crisis of pulling down